Chapter 452, Absolute Despair. Likey saw and ran. Sat Chapter Nua Na was dumbstruck as well when she saw Lin Feng attack. She also hadn't thought that Lin Feng would be so powerful. Lin Feng looked like a weak young noble from the city. When they first met, she assumed that he had run away from a noble family and entered the desert. Meeting them and then encountering the wolves of the desert had caused this situation. Interesting, joked the second young master, interrupting everybody's train of thought. The second young master was still sitting atop his horse. He then smiled and said, "I wouldn't have thought that the tribe would allow someone like you to cultivate. Even if you have cultivated a little bit, the truth is that everyone from the Blackwood tribe is useless." When Lin Feng heard him, he was surprised but immediately laughed and shook his head. That second young master was really a waste of space. He hadn't even been able to determine Lin Feng's strength from such a blatant display of power. "Langya, take some people and bring me his head," said He Mu in an ice-cold tone while pulling a long face. Langya was the strongest warrior of the Blackwood tribe. He had already broken through to the fourth Ling Qi layer. He was using his famous weapon as well, his wolf-tooth club. His wolf-tooth club weighed 150 kilograms. With a single attack he could tear flesh and break bone. Langya was a huge muscular man who was bareback. He grabbed his wolf-tooth club and rested it onto his shoulder. He looked imposing and domineering. His eyes were large like copper bells, and he was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. "I don't need anyone else to interfere, I will kill him myself," said Langya in an ice-cold way. He only took a few huge steps in Lin Feng's direction and immediately arrived in front of Lin Feng. Without the slightest bit of hesitation, he raised his wolf-tooth club and was aiming at Lin Feng's head. While attacking with his weapon, a whistling sound filled the air as an extreme force crashed through the air. The members of the Blackwood tribe were staring at his weapon. Lin Feng had no possible escape from that wolf-tooth club. But at that moment, everybody was astonished. The wolf-tooth club had struck down, but Lin Feng wasn't there anymore. He suddenly appeared by Langya's side. Boom! The wolf-tooth club landed on the ground and the shock made Langya's entire body tremble. The crowd then suddenly saw a strange action from Langya. He fell onto the ground and started crawling. He didn't have the power to stand up. Blood could then be seen dripping onto the golden sand, turning it a deep shade of red. Finally, the crowd realized what had happened and started shaking. Their hearts were racing. The strongest warrior of the Blackwood tribe was dead. But they didn't even see how he died. The only thing they knew was that he'd been killed by Lin Feng. There was no doubt about that. Lin Feng had killed him in the blink of an eye. "If you are planning on killing me, everyone here should join forces. 1 or 2 people will just waste time," said Lin Feng indifferently, which astonished everyone present. Lin Feng was telling everyone their join forces and fight together against him. He Mu was gnashing his teeth and fixedly staring at Lin Feng, but he didn't give another order. "Trash! Go together and kill him, then bring me his woman," shouted the second young master impatiently. He couldn't stand watching this any longer. Lin Feng turned his head towards him and released a monstrous ice-cold energy. It was extremely sharp and piercingly cold, which made the second young master start to shiver. He felt like ice-cold needles were piercing through his skin. "Second young master, we will kill him and bring you that girl to play with," said a few bandits while galloping towards Lin Feng. However, at that moment, he had already released a powerful deadly energy which covered the sky. Those who were attacking Lin Feng were astonished and immediately stopped moving. They didn't dare move against Lin Feng anymore. The crowd was astonished. Lin Feng suddenly disappeared from his initial position and appeared in front of the person who had just spoke out, humiliating Meng Qing and Lin Feng. Huh! When that person saw Lin Feng's ice-cold eyes, he started to shiver. He looked puzzled. He was mounted atop an armored horse and should be looking down at Lin Feng, but surprisingly Lin Feng was stood eye level with him. How was that possible? The man's eyes then followed Lin Feng's body down, and when he realized what was going on, his heart almost leapt from his chest and a shiver ran down his spine. His face looked terrified and hopeless, because at that moment, Lin Feng was floating in the air. He was walking on air, which meant that Lin Feng was at least a Xian Qi layer cultivator. Thump. 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 The sound of everyone beating hearts was audible. The one on the horse was still shaking and his facial expression was hideous. Xian Qi layer. Xian Qi layer. Those were the only words that filled his mind. Xian Qi layer. He wasn't the only one. When the others saw Lin Feng's body float through the air, they all froze in shock, like statues. Lin Feng was a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer. But he was so young. He Mu was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. He had given his tribe the order to kill an extremely strong cultivator of the Xian Qi layer. On top of that, he was extremely young, which meant he was talented. He Mu was regretting everything. He was finally realizing that his daughter was right. Lin Feng, from start to finish, had never even thought about running away. Otherwise, why would he come back to the Blackwood tribe with her, only to flee afterwards? On top of that, Lin Feng had never seemed like he was scared of the wolves of the desert. The most ridiculous thing was that He Mu had never even considered that such a thing might be possible. After he heard He Shan tell him about the wolves of the desert, he had only thought about how to appease them and never considered anything else. He had tied his daughter up and delivered him to the enemy. At that moment, he was realizing that in his panic, he had sided against Lin Feng, who was much stronger than the wolves of the desert. Thinking back, he should have treated Lin Feng as a respected guest. However, what really happened was ridiculous. He Mu had been so scared of a weakling, and because of that weakling, he ordered people to kill an extremely strong cultivator, Lin Feng. The second young master and the tribe were astonished. Lin Feng had the strength of the Xian Qi layer. "What did you say a moment ago?" asked Lin Feng while looking at the man who had just humiliated Meng Qing and him. His voice was cold and emotionless. The man could only tremble and look blankly at Lin Feng. He kept shaking his head and saying, "I didn't say a word." "Nothing." Lin Feng was smiling. His smile was particularly resplendent. He then released a monstrous deadly energy which burst into the sky and enveloped the man's body. The energy was so oppressive that he was almost falling to the ground. "Die," said Lin Feng. A bright and resplendent light flashed through the atmosphere and fell towards the bandit. A spot of blood then emerged between his eyebrows. After collapsing to the ground, his eyes were still wide open, but apart from a few convulsions, his body was lifeless. Thump. 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 Everyone's hearts were pounding while looking at the dead body beneath Lin Feng, who was still floating in the air. PSSH. PSSH. Blood suddenly sprayed into the air. All of the people who were just rushing to attack Lin Feng together had collapsed and fell from their horses. The crowd could only see the light from sword chi, but they never saw a sword being unsheathed. Some of the men urged their horses and started galloping in the opposite direction. However, anyone who tried to run was immediately killed under the sword lights. Countless silhouettes were falling from horsebacks one after the other. They were all dead. It was terrifying. Everyone was terrified and panic-stricken. Fear continued to fill the people's hearts as they then saw Lin Feng slowly rise higher into the air. A moment before, they looked down on Lin Feng. However, they were now looking up at him and admiring his strength. Lin Feng, to them, was as dazzling as the sun. "You want to kill me?" Lin Feng's arm streaked across the sky. He was surrounded by the midday sunlight, which made his figure seem even more majestic. A few bandits let out horrible shrieks and their bodies flew away. Lin Feng had taken their lives. "You humiliated Meng Qing." Lin Feng raised his hand again and his sword light shot through across the sky. Immediately after, more blood splashed into the air. He was killing each of the wolves of the desert one by one. Lin Feng didn't stop killing. His sword light was dancing across the sky as blood filled the air. At that moment, Lin Feng was still floating in the sky. He looked like a god of death. He was absolutely merciless as he continued his massacre. The members of the Blackwood tribe were all astonished and fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Their jaws were agape. They were dumbstruck and had fallen into despair. In what seemed like an instant, he had already killed a great number of people. In no time, he had slaughtered hundreds of people from the wolves of the desert, and at that moment, only one was left, the second young master. Chapter 453, The Massacre. Sunday chapter Likey equals lost, you. The second young master of the wolves of the desert looked around him and saw that all of his comrades were already dead. He was still on his horseback, but he was shaking with fear. He looked terrified. You want to kill me? Said Lin Feng in an ice-cold tone while walking towards the second young master. The second young master wanted to kill Lin Feng. Could he? At that moment, all of his followers had been killed by Lin Feng. Now his life was in Lin Feng's hands. You wanted to kidnap my wife and force her become your wife? Said Lin Feng while releasing some deadly energy which caused fear to penetrate deep into the second young master's heart. I am the second young master of the wolves of the desert. I am the son of the king of the wolves. Outside the city, we are the most influential and powerful group. If you kill me, an endless number of people will hunt you down and slaughter you. Said the second young master. His voice grew louder and louder. He was attempting to restore his courage. He was the son of the king of the wolves. Lin Feng wouldn't dare to kill him. There is no need for them to hunt me down. After killing you, I will just wait here for them. Said Lin Feng indifferently. He didn't even feel the slightest bit intimidated by his interlocutor's threat. Lin Feng even looked like he was going to burst into a fit of laughter. In 3 seconds, I am going to end your life. Said Lin Feng, which stupefied the second young master. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. Said Lin Feng while smiling coldly at the second young master who was now galloping away like a madman. A sword rose into the air. It was a scorching sword. Don't! Shouted the second young master in despair, but it was useless. After that, the light from the sword crashed into his body and turned his internal organs into ashes. His eyes were wide in disbelief. Immediately after, the remains of his body fell to the ground. He was clearly dead. The majestic second young master of the wolves of the desert had just died with his eyes wide open. Lin Feng looked as emotionless. He slowly turned around and looked at the members of the Blackwood tribe, and more particularly at He Mu. Lin Feng still looked like he was going to burst into laughter. He Mu's lips were twitching. He wanted to say something but the words weren't coming out. Because of a few words from the second young master, he wanted to kill Lin Feng. At that moment, he realized that Lin Feng had single-handedly killed all the wolves of the desert. How ridiculous had he been to want to kill Lin Feng? A sharp sound filled the air and Nuana's ties were cut. At that moment, she was staring at Lin Feng and she was speechless. Lin Feng was so young and he had already broken through to the Xian Qi layer. What a terrifying talent. Lin Feng, leave quickly. The wolves of the desert will be coming for you. They won't just let something like this go. Take advantage of this opportunity and leave. Nuana suddenly shouted. Outside of Tianya Hage, the wolves of the desert were the largest power, and they were the undisputed strongest. They had many extremely strong cultivators. They had a dozen tribe heads who were all at the Xian Qi layer. They would definitely hunt down Lin Feng and avenge their people. When Lin Feng heard Nuana, he shook his head and smiled. Leave. Why did he need to leave? Lin Feng, even though you are extremely strong, the wolves of the desert are neither weaklings nor cowards. They will definitely come for you. Said Nuana. She was extremely anxious. Nuana, that's enough. Young Master Lin Feng is certainly strong enough to cope with the wolves of the desert, said He Mu at that moment. He then continued, Young Master Lin Feng, I was blind before, I failed to appreciate your kindness. I hope that we can find a way for you to forgive me. You are always welcome to stay in my tribe and we will properly receive you, as venerable guests. Lin Feng looked amused when he saw He Mu's face. He had killed that group who belonged to the wolves of the desert, he had even killed the second young master. Those bandits would inevitably seek revenge. If they sent people to the Blackwood tribe and found out that Lin Feng wasn't there, they would slaughter everyone. Therefore, He Mu was being very polite and friendly, hoping that Lin Feng would forget that they had just tried to kill him. Get out of my sight, I don't want to see you again, said Lin Feng coldly, which stupefied He Mu. He then replied politely, if you remain here, I will make sure to stay out of your sight. While talking, He Mu moved back into the crowd, as if he really intended to stay out of sight, like Lin Feng said. Lin Feng and Meng Qing didn't leave the Blackwood tribe, they wanted to stay with Noa Na. Concerning He Mu, he kept casting his eyes to the distance. If Lin Feng left, nobody could save the Blackwood tribe. One day passed and then another. Outside of the Blackwood tribe, the sound of galloping horses could be heard on the horizon. The galloping horses were making the ground shake, giving people a feeling of majesty and pride. But the people of the Blackwood tribe weren't excited at all, they were all terrified. The wolves of the desert had come for their revenge. The ground continued to shake, a cloud of golden sand could be seen on the horizon. Everybody in the tribe remained silent as the cloud of sand grew closer, they were all trembling with fear. The group of horses then stopped outside of the tribe. Immediately after, the one who seemed to be their leader said, kill everybody. Slaughter every person from the Blackwood tribe. Yes. The sound of galloping horses filled the air again, but this time they were attacking the Blackwood tribe. Die. A terrifying and cruel chi dashed into the skies and crashed into the crowd of people. All the people who had been touched by that terrifying chi died. Ah! Ah! Help! Blood-curdling shrieks filled the air. The wolves of the desert had only one thing in mind, slaughter. Without saying a word, they had already killed a huge number of people, it was a bloodbath. In a different corner of the tribe, He Mu could clearly sense that his people were being massacred. His silhouette flickered and he immediately moved towards Lin Feng's room. After a short time, he appeared in front of Lin Feng and said, Young Master Lin Feng, the wolves of the desert have come to slaughter us. So what? Said Lin Feng coldly while looking at He Mu. They have come to kill you. Said He Mu, whose facial expression was twitching. If they try to kill me, I will of course deal with them. I don't need you to worry about such things. Now, get lost. Said Lin Feng in an ice-cold tone. He looked absolutely emotionless. But the wolves of the desert are slaughtering the members of my tribe. Said He Mu, he still wasn't leaving, he was expecting Lin Feng to help. What does that have to do with me? Said Lin Feng, whose voice was getting colder. I was hoping that you would show yourself to the wolves of the desert and stop them. Lin Feng burst into laughter, an evil laughter. He took a step forwards and stood in front of He Mu. His face turned ice-cold and he said, the Blackwood tribe wanted to kill me on multiple occasions and now that you are in a critical situation, you want me to protect you? Is that a joke? I, Lin Feng, am not a fool. Said Lin Feng, and at the same time he released a terrifying deadly energy. If you don't get out of my sight immediately, I will kill you. Chapter 454, Savage Thoughts. Likey don't know what to do. Sunday chapter. Some deadly energy pressed against He Mu's body, he was so scared that his legs became weak. He regretted everything and felt hopeless. He turned around and his silhouette flickered as he ran away. It was over, the Blackwood tribe would soon be destroyed. They had tried to kill Lin Feng and now they wanted his protection. Was such a thing possible? Lin Feng wasn't a saint, he wouldn't fight to save the Blackwood tribe that wanted him dead. Even if he was going to fight in the future, he wouldn't lift a finger to help them. Mu walked through the territory of the tribe and all he could see were the scattered corpses of his tribe members. A sudden pain invaded his heart, everything was his fault. Not far in front of Mu, there was a person riding atop a fiery red wolf. That person looked majestic and cruel. Mu's silhouette flickered and in a flash, he appeared in front of the person. Then, Mu said in a very respectful way, "Venerable and respectable King of the Wolves, Your Highness, I am the head of the Blackwood tribe. I am terribly grieved by the second young master's death, but it is neither my fault nor that of my people. I had already pledged my loyalty to the second young master. I had promised to devote my entire life to him. The one who killed the second young master isn't one of us, his name is Lin Feng, he is a young man. Look, he is in there. I beg of you, Your Highness, please forgive us." The king looked at Mu indifferently and then looked in the direction in which Mu was pointing. The king of wolves expressionless said, "Fire wolf, let's go." The fire wolf heard the king and its eyes diffused a dazzling light. Apart from its dangerous eyes, the fire wolf's fur was entirely red. "I beg you, please forgive my tribe," said Mu while bowing in front of the king. The king moved next to Mu and smiled, "I forgive you, so you can all die happily." When Mu heard the king, he was stupefied. Immediately after, the wolf howled and an incredible scorching hot chi emerged. The fire wolf started to breathe fire around its surroundings. In a flash, Mu was a burnt corpse. Mu had died, devoured by the flames. The king of the wolves had shown no mercy at all. "Let's go," said the king of the wolves while walking in the direction which Mu pointed. At the same time, a group of people were following closely behind him. Their deadly chi was thick and dense. Those people were also all releasing their murderous intent in that direction. "I don't need so many people to follow me, a few is enough. The others can continue massacring the tribe members. None of them are to be left alive," said the king of the wolves in a deep voice. Many people turned back and continued looking for members of the Blackwood tribe who may have run or gone into hiding. They were going to keep killing until no one was left. At that moment, Lin Feng was sitting on the roof of the house where he had been staying. He was calmly looking at the silhouettes on the horizon, they were moving in his direction. Lin Feng looked absolutely carefree and unaffected by it though. Very quickly, the king of the wolves and the others arrived to where Lin Feng was sitting at. They raised their heads and looked at the calm-looking young man. They were all surprised. That young man was very brave. Didn't he know why they were here? Didn't he know that they were going to kill him? "Wolf King, I will kill him for you," said someone who was standing next to the king of the wolves. He wanted to show his loyalty. "All right, Luo-sen, go and take his life. Use your sabers to behead him, then bring his head back to me," said the king while nodding. "Don't worry Wolf King, my sabers have grown thirsty after not tasting blood in such a long time," said Luo-sen while moving forwards. He was slowly approaching Lin Feng. He then raised his head and looked at Lin Feng who was still sitting on the roof with a carefree appearance. "Don't worry, I will not kill you slowly, my sabers will first slowly slice away at your flesh, slash by slash, until, eventually, your head falls down," said Luo-sen in a cold and bloodthirsty manner. Lin Feng was gazing into the distance, calmly and serenely, as if Luo-sen hadn't opened his mouth at all. Luo-sen initially wanted to scare Lin Feng but it didn't work. A bloodthirsty look appeared in his eyes, he looked ferocious and wild. He didn't even look like a human being anymore, he looked like a bloodthirsty wolf. Lin Feng glanced at Luo-sen and when he saw that bestial-looking face, he was stupefied, he looked like a hideous wolf. "Remember, the one who will take your life is one of the heads of the wolves of the desert, my name is Yao Lang Luo Sr. When he finished talking, Luo-sen threw himself at Lin Feng. In his bestial-looking eyes appeared a fiery red light. He really looked like a wolf at that moment. His right hand suddenly became longer and what looked like 5 sharp blades appeared. They looked piercingly cold and extremely sharp, besides an ice-cold evil chi was emerging from them. Those were the sabers he had been talking about. Each and every single member of the wolves of the desert was smiling evilly, as if they could already see Lin Feng's body in front of them. At the same time, Lin Feng released a terrifying deadly chi which rolled through the air and enveloped Luo Sen's body. That monstrous deadly chi made Luo Sen suddenly feel extremely cold and he started to shiver from head to toe. He suddenly looked surprised and was scared. "Die," said Lin Feng while releasing a pure deadly energy that was as sharp as a sword, which pierced straight towards Luo. Senator Luo Sen was astonished. His sharp claws immediately landed on the deadly energy, emitting a sharp metallic sound. However, at that moment, Lin Feng was already standing and had started moving. He released more deadly energy and it slowly formed a black sword in his hand. His sword was unleashed and a monstrous amount of deadly energy emerged from it and crashed into Luo Sen. His saber claws were shattered instantly. "Eowoo!" Luo Sen howled like a wolf. The black sword then immediately penetrated into his body and sliced him apart. Luo Sen was dead. Lin Feng took another step through the air and moved towards the other members of the wolves of the desert. He was still releasing a monstrous amount of deadly energy. Initially, Luo Sen's corpse was behind Lin Feng, however, without anyone noticing, the corpse disappeared. It had disappeared completely, as if it had never been there. It was very strange. The other members of the wolves of the desert were stupefied. Lin Feng's strength was unbelievable. That scary deadly energy was surrounding them and they were all terrified. "Let's kill him together," said the king of the wolves. The people who were facing Lin Feng with him at that moment were all heads of the subdivisions of their tribe. Anyone who tried to take on their combined force would die. They were such a large and powerful group that they had to be divided into subgroups. They were living in packs, like wolves. Everybody was scared of them. If anyone dared to threaten them, they would join hands and kill that person together. Their eyes were all ferocious and bestial, just like a wolf pack. Boom! Lin Feng took another step and released more deadly energy which soared into the skies. Some deadly energy surrounded the group and started to suppress them. The wolves of the desert were now realizing how terrifyingly strong this young man was. Lin Feng took another step and it seemed like the ground was going to collapse. His deadly energy grew even more powerful and applied a greater pressure. "Destroy him!" shouted the king furiously. They couldn't wait any longer, they had to attack and kill Lin Feng immediately. After hearing the king, all those heads threw themselves at Lin Feng. Bestial lights were twinkling in their eyes. Lin Feng didn't have the impression that he was fighting other people, he had the impression that they were all ferocious beasts. "Die!" Lin Feng's voice filled the air as a sword descended from the sky and immediately sliced through multiple people. Those people howled with pain as they fell down onto the ground and died. This time, when their silhouettes disappeared, the king's body started to shake. He grabbed their bodies with his hands and in a flash, their corpses turned into fiery red smoke which penetrated into his body. Huh? Lin Feng was surprised, he didn't understand what was happening. What technique was that? But immediately after, his deadly energy became even more powerful and he continued attacking with his sword. He continued to kill his way through the group. One person fell after another. The king was shaking, he took a deep breath and continued to absorb the fiery red smoke from those people. It looked particularly frightening. But the faces of those who hadn't died didn't change at all. They looked like this was absolutely normal. In their eyes, there was only savage thoughts. They wanted to tear apart Lin Feng. However, they were much weaker than Lin Feng and it was obvious, trying to kill Lin Feng was the same thing as willingly courting death. Each time Lin Feng moved his sword, someone died. With every movement he would take another life. Lin Feng realized at that moment that each time he killed someone, they were being absorbed by the king of the wolves, and each time he absorbed that smoke, his chi was becoming more rampant, and he was thus becoming stronger and stronger. Chapter 455, The Four-Tailed Wolf. Likey, this is Monday's chapter. Sorry for delay, I had class so I couldn't do it until today. At that moment, Lin Feng stood with his deadly sword in his hand. Its deadly energy had enveloped the Wolf King's body. The king was glaring at Lin Feng and releasing a coarse and wild chi. The king hadn't thought that Lin Feng would be so powerful, but he didn't look scared at all. His eyes were only filled with endless ferocity. His eyes actually looked like those of a wolf. Human yet not a human, beast yet not a beast, said Lin Feng. His opponent gave him the feeling that he was neither a beast nor a human, he just looked extremely cruel and ferocious. Surprisingly, he was able to absorb power from his dead comrades and turn it into his own power. Aowa, the Wolf King howled loudly while repeatedly shaking his head. His actions seemed just like a wolf. He looked particularly bestial. He didn't even pay attention to what Lin Feng was saying and his eyes continued to grow more ferocious and bestial. So that's how it is, the Wolf King from the wolves of the desert, must be an actual wolf. Lin Feng raised his deadly sword and firmly pointed it towards the Wolf King. Lin Feng's sword suddenly slashed towards the Wolf King at full speed. The Wolf King was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. He crouched to the floor and his hand started to transform into a pair of horrifying red claws which glistened in the sunlight. Die! Shouted Lin Feng. His deadly energy filled the air as his sword descended. Gg. The Wolf King let out a violent growl and launched himself from the back of his fire wolf. His speed was incredible, his red claws revealed their sharp edges as they slashed towards Lin Feng. Suddenly, a terrifying fire chi emerged from the claws which collided with Lin Feng's sword, causing a fiery explosion in the air. The sword chi started to disperse, leaving Lin Feng astonished. After having absorbed the power of his tribe members, the king had become unimaginably strong. At that moment, he had strength similar to the fourth Xian Qi layer. The Wolf King howled once again in a high-pitched tone and threw himself towards Lin Feng with all his might. Lin Feng was shocked. The Wolf King moved so fast that he seemed to vanish from sight. Lin Feng took a step forwards and a rumbling sound filled the air. Lin Feng released waves and waves of deadly energy into the air, but it hardly slowed the Wolf King's speed. Die! Shouted Lin Feng again. He continued to release more deadly energy with increased power. It then collided with the Wolf King's fire energy, which created a stalemate between the two energies. The atmosphere was filled with the sound of collisions as the energies continued to fight against each other to decide a victor. Die! Lin Feng's was surrounded by his deadly energy which was growing denser as he continued to release it into the atmosphere. The sword in his hand had started to turn a deeper shade of black, it looked ominous. Lin Feng didn't retreat, he continued to charge forwards. His pure chi had started to transform into deadly energy which bombarded the atmosphere, causing the Wolf King's heart to tremble. The bloodthirsty eyes of the Wolf King gradually revealed a look of surprise. Lin Feng's deadly energy was becoming denser and more powerful over time. Awowo! The Wolf King howled again while looking to the sky. A sea of flames burst from his body and he threw himself towards Lin Feng, who was slashing down with his sword. Neither side was backing down, they were both pressing forwards gain. Two behemoths were clashing. Boom! 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 The atmosphere was shaking and shockwaves spread through the air each time the deadly energy and flames collided. It started to form a hurricane-like wind across the surroundings. All around them, the scenery was desolate, everything in their surroundings had been completely destroyed. The people in the distance were surprised when they noticed their fight. How powerful! They were obviously surprised by the Wolf King's strength, but Lin Feng's strength surprised them even more. He was incredibly young and already had such a terrifying strength. Nuana was especially astonished. She was standing on the eaves of a house while watching the Wolf King and Lin Feng's battle. Her mouth had grown completely dry and she was unable to speak any words. It was too shocking. Lin Feng was even stronger than what she had imagined. it was inconceivable. At that moment, Nua Na looked perplexed. Even though Lin Feng had saved her from the second young master, her father had died and all the other members of the tribe were being exterminated. Even if her tribe initially wanted to deliver her to the enemy, she was still very close to many members of the tribe, and they were still her family. This calamity could have been avoided. Lin Feng's strength was sufficient to deal with the king of the wolves. If her father hadn't ordered people to act against Lin Feng, their relationship with Lin Feng wouldn't have deteriorated. After that, the tribe moved to kill Lin Feng because of the second young master. If they had welcomed Lin Feng and not acted against him, everything would have been different. Boom! Another collision caused the surroundings to shake, which interrupted Nua Na's train of thought. She then turned her attention back to the fight. She only saw Lin Feng's sword slashing down. The Wolf King couldn't bear the pressure, he started to move back. Lin Feng's deadly energy was too frightening. On top of that, it continued to grow more powerful as more deadly energy was released by Lin Feng. It was incredibly scary, it never stopped growing in power. The Wolf King's ferocious eyes looked even more bestial than before. He howled in a deep voice and moved back. However, at that moment, he sensed a terrifying deadly energy envelop his body. He raised his head and saw Lin Feng's silhouette in the sky above him. He was holding his deadly sword, which was now a deep black, surrounded by bright flames. They looked like the flames of a scorching sun. Besides, the powerful sun was shining onto the sword, which seemed to increase the ferocity of the flames. When Lin Feng's sword descended, the sky was torn asunder, leaving a fiery black trail in its path. It looked like a black and red rainbow had formed above their battle. The black deadly energy and red flames slashed across the sky. The sword moved at an inconceivable speed, it appeared out of nowhere, just like the wind. The Wolf King was stupefied but immediately released its terrifying bestial chi, which exploded in every direction. Woo! The Wolf King howled in anger. Nua Nan, who was watching the battle, was deeply shocked. At that moment, the Wolf King's skin started to tear off as he actually started to transform into a wolf. The wolf looked to the sky and gave a long howl. He was an actual wolf. Flames started to fill the air and surround the wolf. There was no rumbling or sound of a collision, there was only a subtle sound that pierced into people's ears. It was a terrifying screeching sound. A large area around the Wolf King was burned to ashes. The Wolf King and Lin Feng's silhouettes disappeared from sight. There was only raging flames surrounding them. The flaming Wolf King swiftly moved through the flames. The fire wolf mount, which hadn't moved, suddenly turned into a red smoke which rushed towards the Wolf King. It swallowed the fire wolf's power, and then the flames around its body suddenly grew more intense. It was magnificent. A beast. The people watching were astonished and their hearts were unsettled. He was a beast, the king of the wolves of the deserts was a ferocious beast. Lin Feng's silhouette could once again be seen in the air. He was fixedly staring at the wolf, those eyes really looked like those of a wolf. Lin Feng's heart was shaking as well. How was that possible? Lin Feng had already seen a ferocious beast during its transformation process. Only a Tian-level beast could transform into a human, but the king of the wolves didn't seem to be at the Tian level. At that moment, an intense fire started burning around its body and it released a monstrous and terrifying beast chi. In front of everybody, the tail of the wolf grew longer and started to split apart. 3 more tails were formed. The wolf had suddenly become much bigger and now had 4 tails. 4 tails, Lin Feng didn't understand. After the 4th tail grew, the wolf seemed to stop its transformation. At that moment, the Wolf King, which was an actual beast, was still glaring at Lin Feng. It looked hideous, ferocious and cruel. How ferocious? Lin Feng didn't understand. The king of the wolves of the desert was an actual wolf? A sharp scream filled the atmosphere. Nua Na was the person who screamed out. When she saw the terrifying beast, she was overcome with terror. Her eyes were wide and filled with dread. Nuana wasn't the only one to react. The members of the Wolves of the Desert, they were ordinary people and were so shocked that they stopped moving. They were just blankly staring at the wolf surrounded by flames. A four-tailed wolf. Everyone, at that moment, thought about the same terrifying story which involved fire wolves. That story went back to ancient times. All the people watching had conflicting feelings, because they never believed that the story was anything but fiction. They didn't think such a thing was possible. The Wolves of the Desert. Desert. Wolves. When people thought about it, they couldn't help but tremble in fear. The name, Wolves of the Desert, had another meaning. Chapter 456, The Ancient Legend, Tuesday's chapter. In Tianya Hage, there was a legend which came from the ancient past. In ancient times, Tianya Hage didn't exist, there was only an extremely vast open land. The land was constantly exposed to extremely high temperatures which caused the ground to crumble into sand, forming the desert. Under the ground, deep under the land, there was an ancient fire which radiated endless heat. That fire burned for eons until it finally started to gain consciousness. Several parts of the fire transformed into wolves. That was the legend surrounding how fire wolves emerged in the desert. Besides, fire wolves were known for having special powers, some of them were proficient in using powerful illusions. Even if the wolves hadn't reached the Tian level, they were able to use the illusions to appear human. After that, the wolves would appear no different from anyone else. Nobody was ever able to identify a fire wolf's illusion. Time passed by and the legend turned into a story about the humans who entered a bloody war against the fire wolves, with the humans emerging victorious. However, every few hundred years, fire wolves would emerge from under the desert and the bloody cycle would repeat. After countless bloody wars, the humans built the city of Tianya Hage and sealed the ground surrounding the city. However, outside of Tianya Hage, there was still a vast desert for them to emerge. The wolves didn't try to break the seal in Tianya Hage, instead they would emerge in the outer desert and begin their rampage. A sea of fire wolves would appear outside of Tianya Hage every few hundred years. Most people didn't believe the ancient legend, but they knew the story regarding the bloody wars. Since the last time the wolves emerged, the story had faded from people's memories. Even though the king was riding a fire wolf, no one would ever connect it to the story regarding fire wolves. However, at that moment, the Wolf King had transformed into a four-tailed fire wolf, which filled everyone with dread. Those tails were a sign of an upcoming catastrophe. The number of tails indicated the level of the wolf. The Wolf King had 4 tails, which proved it was a 4th-level Xian beast. If it had 5 tails, it would mean that it was a level 5 Xian beast. The external part of Tianya Hage is doomed, everything is going to be destroyed, thought the tribe members while shaking. Those fire wolves were extremely ferocious and vicious, they were known for their bloody massacres. The emergence of fire wolves would be a terrifying event, it would cause the desert to be dyed red with blood. In fact, all the leaders from the wolves of the desert must have been fire wolves which had transformed themselves to appear as humans. That was how the Wolf King was able to absorb their power. The tails of the Wolf King were swinging through the air, its eyes looked cruel and it was fixedly glaring at Lin Feng. It then said, "Initially, we wanted to start at a later date, but you have forced us to speed up our plans." The wolf was still speaking in human tongue, its voice was ice cold. After it finished speaking, a terrifying fire chi filled the air and the wolf disappeared into the sand. Lin Feng wasn't born in the desert, he didn't know about the story regarding fire wolves. He frowned and released a terrifying deadly energy and rushed forwards, he wasn't going to let the Wolf King escape. Lin Feng. However, at that moment, Nuana shouted out, which surprised Lin Feng. He turned his head and looked towards Nuana as if he didn't understand. He only saw that Nuana looked absolutely terrified. Lin Feng was confused by the turn of events. It seemed like everybody there was terrified by the wolves of the desert. "Lin Feng, let's leave quickly. We have to flee the desert and move to the city," shouted Nuana, who was panic-stricken. At the same time, the members of the wolves of the desert also started to escape at full speed. Everyone was crazily trying to escape. They rushed through the desert like lunatics. "What's going on, Nuana?" asked Lin Feng. He had no idea what had caused the people to run scared. The Wolf King had turned into a wolf. Lin Feng was surprised, but not that much. Could it be that Nuana was surprisingly terrified because of that? But at that moment, Lin Feng suddenly felt a tremble run through his body. He looked astonished. Meng Qing and Lin Feng glanced at each other. They both looked extremely surprised. The fire qi which they had sensed under the ground was the ancient fire from legends. At that moment, the fire qi was growing stronger, as if a volcanic eruption was close. It was a disaster. "Let's go, we have to run, otherwise we won't make it. I will tell you the details on the way." Nuana ignored the fact that Lin Feng and Meng Qing were confused. She immediately rushed over to grab Meng Qing's hand and started running towards Lin Feng and said, "Hurry up. We have to go and reach the city if we want to keep our lives." Lin Feng was stupefied. It seemed like everyone was terrified because the fire qi beneath the desert. "Meng Qing!" shouted Lin Feng. Meng Qing immediately understood and rose into the air while holding on to Nuana. Nuana let out a squeal of surprise. She had always wondered what it would be like to fly through the sky, but at that moment, she only felt nauseous. Meng Qing had only grabbed hold of one of her arms. Suddenly another hand grabbed Nuana's other arm. She turned her head and noticed Lin Feng had flown over. Meng Qing and Lin Feng were each holding one of her arms as they flew through the sky. "How strong! Lin Feng and his wife are both so powerful," thought Nuana in surprise. Flying through the air was something that she had always dreamt of, and at that moment her dream had come true. However, this was not how she had imagined it. She wasn't as excited and happy as when she dreamt about it. Her father was dead and her tribe had been destroyed. On top of that, the fire wolves were about to emerge for another bloodbath. "Nuana, what's going on?" The pure qi was whistling through the air as they flew through the clouds, which made Lin Feng's voice hard to hear over the whistling sounds. Lin Feng, approximately every 100 years, the fire wolves emerged from the depths of the earth. These wolves were born in a sea of fire, and when they are unleashed into the desert, they started a massacre and moved to attack Tianya Hage. With the powerful wind hitting her face, it was difficult for Nuana to form a sentence. She then added, "Those fire wolves were able to use illusions. The leaders of the wolves of the desert are actually all fire wolves that disguise themselves as humans. Since the wolves have already started to emerge, and didn't immediately attack, it means that they have developed a larger strategy over the past 100 years. So you are telling me that since the Wolf King was a fire wolf, it means that there is an army of fire wolves that have been plotting underground? They were not attacking the humans previously because they were preparing something on a larger scale." When Lin Feng heard Nuana's explanation, he remained silent for a moment and then continued to question her. He was surprised. The fire wolves came from the depths of the earth. It seemed like the fire qi that Meng Qing and Lin Feng had sensed wasn't an illusion. Indeed, they were preparing a large-scale strategy, but because they identified them and because the wolves they were using for the plan were killed by you, they will attack while they still have the element of surprise," said Nuana while nodding. Her hair was messily fluttering through the wind, her forehead was wrinkled and her eyes filled with dread. An army of fire wolves would soon emerge. "Fire wolves," whispered Lin Feng. He gazed into the distance and saw countless fire wolves emerging from the sand. The wolves varied in size, some were large and others were small, some only had a single tail while others had numerous tails. "It's really happening." Nuana was stupefied and continued, "Lin Feng, we need to hurry, we have to take shelter in Tianya Hage as soon as possible. Each time the wolves emerge, some monstrously strong fire wolves will be leading them. It's terrifying. The wolves will continue to emerge until the desert is filled with a sea of wolves, and then they will begin their attacks on Tianya Hage." "How far is Tianya Hage from here?" asked Lin Feng. About 500 kilometers. Replied Noa Na, which shocked Lin Feng. Another 500 kilometers. It seems like we are going to have to fight with the army of fire wolves, said Lin Feng while smiling wryly. 500 kilometers. Meng Qing and Lin Feng couldn't possibly carry Noa Na over such a long distance. First, they would consume too much pure qi attempting it, and second, they weren't able to cover that distance, especially while carrying another person. Noa Na, we have broken through to the Xian Qi layer, but we cannot continuously fly. We need to use pure qi in order for us to fly. Only cultivators of the Tian Qi layer are able to fly freely through the sky, said Lin Feng, then continued, I have a large number of purity stones, but it's possible that it won't be enough to reach Tianya Hage. Noa Na was speechless, so would they have to fight against the wolves? Don't worry, Noa Na. With Meng Qing and me here, a few fire wolves won't be much of a problem, said Lin Feng while smiling. His voice sounded comforting and he was attempting to lighten Noa Na's mood. But Lin Feng's mind was still reeling. He was shocked that there was a beast swarm which could emerge from underground. Chapter 457, Crystal Wednesday. Chapter Lin Feng, Meng Qing, and Noa Na were still floating amongst the clouds and looking across the boundless desert. More and more fire wolves emerged from the ground. They were looking for humans to satisfy their bloodlust. Noa Na looked exhausted and desperate. She had encountered another catastrophe. It was the worst catastrophe that could happen to all the tribes living outside Tianya Hage. It would be a one-sided slaughter. Lin Feng looked expressionless, but his heart felt heavy. He had tempered his heart through killing, but he wasn't emotionless. Because he had lived through so many massacres already, he was accustomed to people dying. He didn't have the powers of a god. Lin Feng wasn't able to directly oppose fate and save everybody. If he tried, death would come quickly. On the path of cultivation, he had to remain determined and clear-headed. He couldn't let his heart be swayed by the cruelty of fate. On the ground, there was a group of fire wolves that seemed to notice them flying in the sky, which caused the wolves to howl aggressively. I can see some of fire wolves transforming into humans. At that moment, Noa Na couldn't believe her eyes. She had just noticed an extremely strong fire wolf transforming into a human. Seeing it in person caused her mind to race. It's over. Noa Na's face turned deathly pale. She had never encountered a fire wolf outbreak and she was just noticing how terrible it was going to be. What's wrong, Noa Na? Asked Lin Feng. Quickly. First they are going to take control of the outer desert. When they're done with that, they will try and infiltrate Tianya Hage before they begin their attack. Those wolves can transform into the shape of humans after all, said Noa Na in a low voice. Even though her voice was low, Meng Qing and Lin Feng clearly understood her meaning, leaving them slightly shocked. Noa Na, you mean that Tianya Hage will block entry to everyone attempting to enter the city? At that moment, the fire wolves that were emerging in the desert could transform into humans. Would the people of Tianya Hage foolishly accept people into the city before an attack? How would they know if the people they accepted were wolves or not? The people of Tianya Hage are extremely powerful. The people who do not belong to the city are thrown into the desert to be the first wave against the wolves. When the wolves attack, the first to be killed are always the tribes of the desert, whispered Noa Na. The people inside the city disdain the tribes that live in the desert. Now the wolves are emerging to attack. They will not let anyone into the city, even though we will all die. Lin Feng was surprised. Noa Na was right, there was no way they would ever let them into the city. Maybe I'm thinking too much, suddenly said Noa Na while smiling and trying to console herself. The three of them were still flying through the sky as they discussed. Lin Feng's quickly retrieved some purity stones. He started to absorb the qi from the purity stone to increase their speed. After some time, Lin Feng looked at Meng Qing to his left and said, Meng Qing, we need to find a safe place to land. At that moment, Lin Feng was well aware that while flying, he was burning his qi much faster than his body could replenish it. His head had started to grow dizzy and his vision had started to blur. Meng Qing would probably be feeling the same. Alright. Meng Qing slightly nodded and they immediately found a safe place for their group to land. Lin Feng's senses were growing dull, he then added, "We have to hurry. If we waste time, it will become more dangerous for us. We have to travel by foot the rest of the journey to Tianya Hage." Meng Qing and Nua Na obviously wouldn't argue. Even though it was dangerous to be on the ground, they had to keep moving. Lin Feng was at the front of the group, clearing a path for the two people behind him. Even though running at top speed also required him to use pure qi, it used a great deal less than flying through the sky. When flying they had to use qi to directly oppose gravity, in comparison, running didn't require much pure qi at all. It was much easier for the group to travel by land. Woo. The howls of the wolves filled the air in every direction. Lin Feng was confronted with two fire wolves that were directly in their path. Even though the fire was burning around their bodies, that fire wasn't comparable to the Wolf King. Their bodies were much smaller in comparison to the other wolves as well, they were probably only fire wolves at the Ling level. "Get lost!" shouted Lin Feng, while releasing a pure qi which shot from Lin Feng's mouth with his words and crashed into the two fire wolves. They cried out painfully, as their bodies burst apart and transformed into flames which penetrated back into the ground. Those fire wolves were not beasts of flesh and blood, they were born from fire. What could cause fire to take the form of a beast? Thought Lin Feng. He was visibly shocked. When he attacked those two wolves, their bodies became fire which then shot back into the ground, their bodies had completely disappeared. Next time, I should pay closer attention, thought Lin Feng. As they continued to run forward, Lin Feng could sense the powerful fire qi of the wolves around him. He didn't try to avoid the fire wolves and instead, he immediately ran to fight them. Xian level fire wolves. Lin Feng sensed the qi coming from the direction of the fire wolf. It was definitely a Xian level fire wolf. When it came into vision, it had one tail. Lin Feng, without the slightest degree of hesitation, released a terrifying deadly energy which made the fire wolf retreat. It could sense that the energy was extremely dangerous. Lin Feng didn't stop there, he continued to shoot forward using the power of the wind. He immediately arrived next to the fire wolf, and his sword slashed down on the wolf. In the blink of an eye, Lin Feng killed the wolf. A terrifying qi burst into the air. Lin Feng stared at the body and noticed as it started to disperse. The body transformed into fire and smoke. However, Lin Feng saw something strange. Inside the flames, there was a beautiful red crystal. When the crystal touched the ground, it disappeared just like the flames. What was that? Was it something valuable? Lin Feng was greatly shocked. That crystal seemed like it contained the power of the fire wolf. It contained an immense fire qi. If it really contained the fire qi of the wolf. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He looked at Meng Qing and Nua Na who were still closely following behind him and he dashed forwards. This time, he was directly searching for more fire wolves. They soon encountered another Xian-level fire wolf with one tail. Lin Feng quickly killed the wolf. This time, Lin Feng was testing a theory. After killing the beast, his silhouette flickered and he immediately grabbed the red crystal that appeared inside the flames. Lin Feng's body was surrounded by raging flames which began to transform into a small black lotus. Lin Feng slowly moved the red crystal closer to the black lotus. In a flash, the black lotus absorbed the crystal and the fire qi inside. Lin Feng had a huge smile on his face. The black lotus in his hand started to transform back into sun qi which surrounded Lin Feng's body in the form of raging flames. Pure sun qi. It worked just as I expected, thought Lin Feng with a delighted expression. His gamble had paid off. Those red crystals were fire crystals and they were the core of the fire wolves, which contained all of their fire qi. Besides, Lin Feng's grim fire Black Lotus was able to absorb and process every kind of fire. It was able to transform the fire chi from the crystals into grim fire and then transform that grim fire back into sun chi. This would allow Lin Feng's Cosmos Burning Sun skill to grow more powerful. Lin Feng wanted his Cosmos Burning Sun skill to continuously advance. He wanted it to advance into a true sun skill. His sun chi would also grow stronger as he advanced. It was a symbiotic relationship. As his sun chi grew stronger, the skills would advance to higher levels, and as the skill advanced, the sun chi grew stronger. The sun chi and the Cosmos Burning Sun skill benefited as the other grew stronger. Lin Feng continued walking forwards. He had an idea. He wanted to stay in the desert and kill more fire wolves and collect their crystals. He could use this as an opportunity to enhance his sun chi. But Lin Feng wouldn't do that with Meng Qing by his side. It was too dangerous. She didn't need to brave such a dangerous situation. He kept moving forwards, while still paying attention to the wolves surrounding them. They made sure to avoid the more powerful fire wolves. And Lin Feng would kill the weaker ones with a single sword strike. As long as the wolves hadn't reached a level 3 Xian beast, they wouldn't have the ability to defend against Lin Feng's sword. Sometimes, they would encounter groups of fire wolves, but Lin Feng would kill them all in the blink of an eye. He was like a meteor shooting through the sky. Lin Feng continued to absorb the crystals he gathered without hesitation. After some time, Lin Feng had already absorbed several dozen fire crystals. He could clearly sense that his sun chi was growing more intense and the flames grew more powerful. His sword skills, which used sun chi and his Black Lotus power, were advancing to higher levels. Lin Feng was impatient to increase his power. Chapter 458, The Myriad of Black Lotuses. Lin Feng and his group were still running at full speed, leaving only a cloud of dust in their wake. In the distance, there was a gigantic gate entered their vision. They were almost at Tianya Hage. "We are almost there," whispered Noa Na. The journey had been extremely tiring yet enriching as well. Lin Feng's battles had given her countless insights and advancements on her path of cultivation. The strongest cultivators that Noa Na had ever encountered in the past were at the Ling Qi layer, including her father, but Lin Feng was fearlessly fighting against Xian-level fire wolves as they ran. It was no longer the ferocious beasts that were killing humans, it was Lin Feng who was killing ferocious beasts. On top of that, Lin Feng would absorb the fire crystals that acted as their core after each battle. Noa Na had never thought things like absorbing an opponent's qi were possible. Noa Na sighed. Strong cultivators had many abilities and were able to do whatever they wished. If she had been extremely strong, she could also fight against those fire wolves and receive benefits. Unfortunately, the strongest cultivators were from the city of Tianya Hage. Only if the Wolf King chose to attack the city, would they emerge to fight, otherwise, they would not take action. They would let the tribes of the desert be devoured by the fire wolves. That was the cruel reality of the world. People were only able to protect themselves, they weren't able to protect everyone. They were by no means saints and would not sacrifice themselves to save the desert tribes. Awuwu. Awuwu. Wolves were howling from every direction, which caused Lin Feng to frown and narrow his eyes. There was a cold light in his eyes. "It's a wolf pack," whispered Lin Feng. This pack of fire wolves had gathered near Tianya Hage. They were waiting to enter the city and slaughter the people, therefore they began gathering outside the city. They were all staring at the city, waiting for their army to gather, then they would begin their siege. Awuwu, the unceasing howls of the wolves were painful to people's ears. It seemed like they were calling out for all the wolves to gather. Every wolf was howling together. When the people heard the howls, a chill invaded their hearts. Those wolves were all howling at the sky, it was terrifying. A wolf pack. Noa Na's face turned deathly pale. Tianya Hage was surrounded by wolves. This wolf pack would be more like an army, there were no words to describe her fear. A wolf pack wasn't the same as a few wolves, they would all work together and none of them feared death, just like the group from the wolves of the desert that fought against Lin Feng. Even if they knew that they would die by Lin Feng's hands, they would still fearlessly lunge towards him as a pack. The more wolves there were, the more terrifying the pack became. As their numbers grew, so did their fearlessness. Besides, in each wolf pack, there was always a leader which was much stronger than the rest of the wolves. As Lin Feng and the others approached Tianya Hage, they noticed that the desert became flat, but because it was flat, Lin Feng's group could clearly see the wolves that were gathering. A myriad of ominous eyes all looked hungrily towards their group. But Lin Feng continued to run forward, he didn't stop even for an instant, he too was fearless, it was as if the wolves were invisible to him. Meng Qing, take Nua Na to the city. I will open a path, said Lin Feng. Meng Qing slightly nodded, they couldn't afford to waste time. Die! Shouted Lin Feng while releasing a terrifying deadly energy. Lin Feng charged forward with an incredible speed, he looked like he had gone berserk. Woo. When that wolf pack saw a human charging towards them, they couldn't help but grow even more ferocious. A countless amount of sharp claws made their way through the air as they slashed towards him. Suddenly, Lin Feng slammed his feet down and jumped into the air, leaving a large crater where his feet had been. Pure sun chi was released as flames started to engulf his body. The sun was shining down onto his flaming figure as a dazzling light shone around him. Lacerate! Shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. Inside that dazzling light, Lin Feng's figure had disappeared, only his sword was in sight, a scorching sword. Ggggr. The wolves started to growl aggressively towards the sky. Many of them even threw themselves towards Lin Feng. They wanted to kill Lin Feng, but under the pressure that was released from his body, the wolves felt like they were going to be ripped to shreds. Lin Feng's sword and energy had frightened a number of the wolves. Lin Feng's sword descended from the sky, it seemed like the entire sun had been condensed inside that sword which sliced through the wolves in its path. It seemed like the sun had fallen from the sky and was crashing down towards the wolves. Boom! Awoo! The howling from the wolves sounded like the wailing from ghosts. A myriad of wolves had been lacerated by Lin Feng's sword and a crevice had been cut deep into the ground. The crevice was so wide and deep that a great number of the weaker wolves fell into the abyss. Let's go, said Lin Feng in a low voice. Meng Qing reacted very quickly and ran forward, she jumped through the air like a graceful goddess. Even in a situation where their lives were on the line, Meng Qing still had a graceful aura. Lin Feng jumped through the air and appeared in front of Meng Qing. His sword condensed in his hand, and the wolves started to back away, which enabled Lin Feng to open a path to the city. Meng Qing dragged Nua Na behind her as she ran from the wolves. Woo! Terrifying howls filled the air. The wolves wanted to chase them, but Lin Feng quickly turned and stopped in the air with a dangerous light in his eyes. His eyes were ice-cold and emotionless as he glared at the wolf pack. Lin Feng started to release his grim fire, in front of Lin Feng a black lotus was forming. That black lotus was filled with powerful grim fire which was condensed into the form of a lotus, its power was terrifying. Those wolves could sense the power fluctuations coming from the black lotus as it formed. They quickly stopped chasing Meng Qing and Nua Na, they were all watching Lin Feng and at his black lotus. Lin Feng was also looking at that wolf pack. Across the vast desert, he was able to see the flames coming from the gathered wolves. There were countless wolves gathered outside the city, each cluster had around 1,000 wolves. Lin Feng's eyes had turned black and he slowly closed his eyes. He then released a number of surplus souls which merged with his black lotus. It caused the black lotus grow much larger and more powerful with each soul. As the lotus grew, the powerful deadly energy started to run rampant and invade the atmosphere. Break! Said Lin Feng. In a flash, the black lotus split apart and formed into a myriad of black lotuses. After the large black lotus split into the smaller lotuses, their power once again grew calm. If a single black lotus contained too much power, Lin Feng would have trouble controlling it. The lotuses then split again into small black lotuses. The sky was filled with countless small black lotuses. The power of a single black lotus was more powerful than these wolves. Lin Feng's eyes were still closed. His complexion looked pale and his brow had formed into a frown. However, his face looked more determined than ever. His lips trembled as Lin Feng started to speak. "Annihilation!" shouted Lin Feng. His terrifying deadly energy filled the air. It seemed like the black lotuses were an army unleashing their battle cry. They immediately charged towards the wolves. The howls of the wolves were still unceasing. They threw themselves towards the black lotuses. Some of them even tried to swallow a black lotus whole, but after swallowing them, a monstrous black fire would disintegrate their bodies. Very quickly, the red sea of howling fire wolves had turned into a black sea filled with shrieks of agony. Over 1,000 fire wolves had been burnt to ashes. It seemed like the black flames wanted to burn the entire desert. Luckily, nobody noticed it, otherwise they would have been terrified. Lin Feng was deathly pale and sweat was dripping from his brow. He looked completely exhausted. Lin Feng gnashed his teeth. His senses were extremely acute to his surroundings. "Show yourself!" shouted Lin Feng evilly. Several black lotuses were floating around Lin Feng. Each of these lotuses contained more power than the smaller ones used a moment before. "Go!" shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. The black lotuses condensed together and rushed through the air towards their target. Chapter 459, Flames. Thursday's chapter next one in 1 hour from now too. Lin Feng was still killing his way through the group of fire wolves while Meng Qing and Nua Na were rushing towards Tianya Hage. But at that moment, the gate was closed and showed no signs of movement. Besides, at the top of the gate, there were a great number of people. They were all from Tianya Hage. Since the wolves had emerged, the strongest cultivators of the city would gather at the city walls in preparation to defend against the wolves. There were also a number of talented young people on the walls. They were all particularly excited to show everyone their capabilities. At the same time, it would serve as vital battle experience for them. When they saw Meng Qing and Nua Na beneath the gate, they all looked at them with cold and detached gazes. They didn't say a word, they just calmly watched the pair. "Gentlemen, I am Nua Na from the desert tribes. This is my friend, Meng Qing. I hope that you will allow us to enter the city," said Nua Na to those people, but they remained silent. They were still looking at them with the same cold and detached glares. The atmosphere filled with an oppressive silence which made Nua Na's face grow pale. It seemed like she had guessed right, entering the city was impossible. "I beg you to let us into the city," said Nua Na pitifully. She started to kowtow when she saw that they were unmoved. She had started begging them. "The people from the tribes are all weak, how would you possibly make it through that sea of wolves to reach the city?" said one of them in a cold tone. They didn't believe that these two were human, which made Nua Na even more desperate. "Gentlemen, please, you must believe us," said Nua Na again. She was trying her best to convince them. Lin Feng was still fighting against the fire wolves. If they didn't enter the city soon, they would be surrounded and killed by the wolves. No matter what, they had to enter the city. "How could we believe such a thing?" said someone in a mocking tone. Nua Na turned her head and saw a young man leaning against a wall. In his hand, there was an arched saber. He was looking at Nua Na and Meng Qing with an evil and ferocious gaze. The two women looked very attractive, especially the one with the fine veil covering her face. Fire wolves can take the form of humans, but they are still beasts. You should take off all your clothes and show everybody that you are really human. That's the only way for us to verify your humanity. Then we will open the gates for you," said the young man with an evil tone. In a flash, everybody started laughing. Sir Ku is right. Take off your clothes and we'll be able to verify your humanity. If you are able to meet our requirements, we will open the gates to the city. Added someone else. Indeed, we're all watching, hurry up and remove your clothes. Jeered one person after the other, which stupefied Noa Na. Besides, Meng Qing had already started releasing her ice energy. The people of Tianya Hage were all extremely strong cultivators, and the weak were always the prey of the strong. Even on the streets, a murder could happen at any time. If someone didn't have the power to protect themselves, no matter if it was for a precious item or a love interest, they would lose their life because of it. Noa Na was well aware of that. Tianya Hage was a desert city ruled by strong cultivators from the desert. It was a city where the laws of the jungle reigned supreme. The city was savage and lawless, the streets were filled with robbery and death. Those who didn't have a powerful background, those who didn't have enough strength, would be forced out of the city. Only the strong could survive inside this city. The cultivators on the walls were shocked and they sensed Meng Qing's ice energy. That woman seems good, she looks tasty. I want to verify her identity in my private chambers, said Sir Ku while standing up. As he spoke, everybody burst into laughter. Die! A terrifying ice energy burst into the air. Meng Qing's silhouette flickered and she shot towards the wall. She threw herself towards Sir Ku. When Noa Na saw that Meng Qing was attacking the people from Tianya Hage, her face turned even paler. There was no longer any chance of them entering the city. Noa Na turned her head and saw a group of wolves in the distance. There were countless sand clouds filling the air. Noa Na noticed a silhouette in one of the sand clouds. It was Lin Feng. When Noa Na saw Lin Feng, she started to regain her confidence. She had an absolute faith in Lin Feng. Huh! The crowd suddenly noticed a powerful qi moving towards them. They raised their heads and looked into the distance. Immediately, they saw Lin Feng, who had a cloud of sand trailing behind him. Boom! A sand cloud rose into the air as Lin Feng jumped into the air, shooting directly towards Sir Ku. Stop! A figure shot into the air. That person was attempting to stop Lin Feng. At that moment, a terrifying deadly energy filled the sky. It was astonishing. The person who had just jumped into the air was confronted by the terrifying deadly energy. He quickly regretted his decision. He wished he had never gotten involved. Die! The deadly energy whistled through the air. The person looked terrified and his eyes filled with endless regret. His body was enveloped by the deadly energy, which made his heart leap from his chest. A powerful sword qi rapidly shot through the air. The people on the walls were terrified. The sword was so fast that none of them felt they were able to stop it. Pssssh. At that moment, the person's body was sliced in two halves as blood rained down from the sky. Who was that young man? How brutal, how violent. He didn't understand the meaning of mercy. In Tianya Hage, there was no law. The weak could only suffer at the hands of the strong. Everybody in the city enjoyed picking on those weaker than themselves, and the weakest of them could only suffer the abuse in silence. When Meng Qing and Noa Na arrived, Noa Na had begged, which amused the people on the walls. They mocked them, and they disregarded them as weak. However, when Lin Feng arrived, he didn't waste any words before ruthlessly killing, which left them speechless. Nobody was making jokes anymore. They were terrified. This was the cruel law of the jungle where strength and ruthlessness were king. Boom! A gigantic collision sound spread through the air. Meng Qing and Sir Ku's power collided and they were both propelled backwards. However, Lin Feng immediately caught Meng Qing and placed her onto the ground. Are you alright? Asked Lin Feng to Meng Qing. Meng Qing nodded, but she still looked ice cold. Leave it to me, said Lin Feng indifferently. He turned his head and looked at the people on the walls. He rose into the air and released a terrifying deadly energy. When the crowd saw Lin Feng's eyes, they all felt a shiver run down their spine. Those eyes were so cold, These were the eyes of a killer. It seemed like the girl they had just humiliated was his woman. Lin Feng turned his head and looked towards Sir Ku, which left him stupefied. He also stared at Lin Feng. Lin Feng condensed a sword in his hand, the edges of the sword were engulfed by a terrifying black flame. Lin Feng's entire body was covered in terrifying black flames. His grim fire seemed like it was able to burn the world to ashes. Sir Ku looked respectful when facing Lin Feng. He unsheathed his arched saber which diffused a desolate light. It looked like a crescent moon which could illuminate the earth. Lin Feng charged forward without a word, his deadly energy would do the talking. His energy was growing more powerful with each movement and his sword grew more dazzling. The crowd was hypnotized by the terrifying black flames which surrounded his body. As the sun shone upon Lin Feng's body, it surprisingly increased Lin Feng's power. Lin Feng rushed forward, he had condensed all of his energy into grim fire, there were only the black flames remaining. Boom! Lin Feng's black flames grew wilder as they increased in power. Everybody's heart was on edge. What happened? He just broke through to the next layer. Everyone was speechless. Lin Feng's had turned all of his energy into grim fire which engulfed his body in flames, the sun that was shining on his body transformed into qi which caused his flames to continuously grow stronger, but he unexpectedly used this to break through the barrier into the next Xian qi layer. How terrifying! He broke through to the next cultivation layer while fighting. Lin Feng had to fight so many intense battles that he didn't have time to quietly cultivate to the next Xian qi layer. So he broke through in the middle of a fight, causing his strength to surge. The situation was becoming extremely dangerous for Sir Ku. Chapter 460, Death on the City Walls. Friday's chapter and fluffy next one in another hour. When Sir Ku saw Lin Feng breaking through to the next cultivation layer, his heart felt heavy. Lin Feng was a terrifying individual. If he had known that Meng Qing and Nua Na were accompanied by such a tyrannical young man, he wouldn't have acted so aggressively towards them. There was no going back for him. He had already made Lin Feng his enemy. He had no choice, if he didn't fight, Lin Feng would still kill him. Lin Feng didn't feel anything strange after breaking through to the third Xian qi layer. He had gone through so many battles, all of those battles were fought with all of his strength. He had gained insights regarding qi and the use of energy when he was reunited with his father. On top of that, he had also absorbed a large number of fire crystals. Breaking through to the third Xian qi layer was only a matter of time, where the water overflows, a channel will form. Lin Feng's qi and soul had already been strengthened beyond the third Xian qi layer. At that moment, when he broke through to the third Xian qi layer, he didn't feel tired at all, his cultivation was already stable. The black flames surrounding his body were becoming more and more dazzling. When the crowd on the walls of the city sensed his energy, they were even more terrified. The scariest part was that Lin Feng's sword didn't only contain a scorching sun qi, it also contained a terrifying, deadly qi. That sword had the power to annihilate everything, wherever that sword was directed, the only destruction would follow. Lin Feng's energy was whistling through the air as it moved towards the top of the city gate. Many of the people that were near Sir Ku started to move away to avoid getting involved. They didn't dare get close to Lin Feng's sword, if that sword reached them, it would be the end of them. Sir Ku looked serious and solemn. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng, he was starting to feel the pressure. When facing a powerful cultivator, a single mistake would be fatal. Lin Feng was very powerful, so Sir Ku didn't dare to act carelessly, he knew he had to use his full strength. Sir Ku's facial expression was calm but also desolate and dreary like a crescent moon. An arch-shaped saber spirit was released behind him. Sabers were Sir Ku's specialty. He was extremely well known within the city. Every time he used his saber, people would tremble and run cold with fear. However, at that moment, his dreary and desolate saber looked pale in comparison with Lin Feng's scorching sword. It was like comparing the moon to the sun. His saber looked insignificant in comparison. I, Ku, have been practicing saber cultivation for 15 years. People at the same level wouldn't dream of attacking me. Those who do inevitably die," said Ku in an ice-cold tone. His saber energy grew more violent and domineered with each word. When Lin Feng heard him, his face still looked cold and expressionless. Lin Feng took a step forward and slashed down with his sword. His terrifying, deadly energy crashed through the atmosphere towards Ku. "My enemies who were at my cultivation level, they didn't even know how they died," said Lin Feng indifferently. With his sword, Lin Feng could easily deal with people the same cultivation level as him. When he used his full strength, they would die in an instant. Lin Feng's words caused everyone to tremble. Ku said that people who dared to attack him died to his saber. He said that to destroy Lin Feng's confidence and regain his own, but Lin Feng's sentence had destroyed Ku's confidence instead. Besides, Lin Feng had remained calm this entire time. His sword was able to kill people with a higher cultivation using only a single strike. "You will be no exception," said Lin Feng in an ice-cold tone. The sky was filled with deadly energy which continued to grow stronger. "Die! Die! Die! Die!" Lin Feng's single word, "die," echoed through the atmosphere. His scorching sword was engulfed in black flames. It seemed like everything else in the world was lacking in comparison with Lin Feng's sword. Sir Ku looked astonished. That sword was making him nervous. It was terrifying. He gnashed his teeth and brandished his saber. Ku, who had always been able to kill his opponents with ease, seemed powerless when confronting Lin Feng. Everyone watched as Ku's saber chi was consumed by Lin Feng's sword chi. Sir Ku was shocked as he watched the sword descend. He regretted everything. He wanted to take everything back. His future was supposed to be filled with glory, but because he assailed Meng Qing with obscenities, nobody could save him. A subtle sound filled the air as Lin Feng's sun's sword descended and slashed Ku's body. His body was engulfed by black flames and disintegrated. Not a single part of his body remained. Only a small amount of blood gushed into the air. This was the price for humiliating Meng Qing, which was the price for angering Lin Feng. Only deathly silence filled the air. Lin Feng was terrifying. Just like he had said a moment before, Ku didn't even know how he died. Even if Lin Feng hadn't broken through to the third Xian Qi layer, his sword would still have been enough to kill Ku. At that moment, Lin Feng coldly glanced at the crowd, which made them shiver with fear. They didn't dare look Lin Feng in the eyes. "Meng Qing, Nuana, who else was it?" asked Lin Feng. Those who had dared to humiliate Meng Qing started shaking with fear. They were terrified. Lin Feng was asking the girls to point out those who had humiliated them. He would kill them all. "Him, her and him," said Nuana while pointing at 3 people. Those 3 had also humiliated them and jeered them. Of course, Nuana wouldn't hold back. The people who Nuana had just pointed at were shaking, their hearts pounding violently. They turned their heads because they could feel Lin Feng's glaring eyes. At the same time, a terrifying, deadly energy rushed through the air towards them. "Run!" They shouted loudly as they tried to escape. They immediately started running in the direction of the city, hoping to escape. Escape? Lin Feng remained detached. He was as swift as the wind when catching up to the closest one who was fleeing. His sword descended. Immediately after, a horrible shriek spread through the air. That sword had penetrated into his chest and destroyed his internal organs. His body then slowly collapsed to the ground. "Humph." Lin Feng sighed. The 2 others had also tried to escape. Lin Feng released his purple spirit which immediately caught them with inconceivable speed. "Sir! Sir!" The 2 people were astonished. Purple snakes had tightly constricted their bodies and trapped them. The purple snakes dragged them back towards Lin Feng where they met his sword, ending their lives. One sword, two corpses, they were killed in a flash. Lin Feng looked calm and serene. He had just killed 3 people without any mercy. He took a step and suddenly appeared atop the wall again. He said to Noana, "Noana, anyone else?" Noana glanced at them and shook her head. All the people who humiliated them and told them to take off their clothes were dead. Noana wasn't going to have Lin Feng kill everybody, the main culprits were enough. Lin Feng nodded and didn't say any more. In the distance, the wolves were still howling, and a terrifying fire chi filled the air. "The wolf pack has arrived," whispered Lin Feng. Immediately after, his silhouette flickered, and he landed next to Noana. He helped Meng Qing carry Noana as they flew onto the city ramparts. Everybody had heard Lin Feng and started to gaze into the distance. They were astonished. That terrifying bestial fire chi was quickly approaching. They had fire-red eyes and were howling at the sky. Their fire wasn't like the one Lin Feng had just released. They were monstrous and bestial. Those fire wolves wanted to turn Tianya Hage into a bloodbath. Noana looked at the crowd and then looked to Lin Feng. Her heart was still racing. She had felt extremely scared this entire time. At first, she was scared that they wouldn't be able to enter the city, but at that moment she was scared of everything. She lived in a world where the strong devoured the weak. If anyone wanted to stop them from entering the city, Lin Feng would kill them. He had used his overwhelming power to barge into the city. Who would dare to block his path again? Besides, Lin Feng had shown that he wasn't an emerged fire wolf. Would a fire beast be a master of swords? Whatever happened, strength would always be the deciding factor in the desert. If those people saw someone that was weak, even if they knew they weren't fire wolves, they would still take advantage and ridicule them. However, if someone was strong, just like Lin Feng, they didn't need to ask permission. If anyone tried to stop them from entering the city, they would immediately kill anyone who blocked the way. If the weaker ones objected, it was the same as courting death. The stronger cultivators from the city wouldn't get involved. Why would they want to create enmity with a powerful unknown cultivator? Chapter 461, Fighting the Wolf Pack. Friday's chapter, for some reason it didn't release. Well, next one when I get it. The fire wolves were growing nearer, which started to draw more and more people's attention. They had already gotten so close, the whole pack was in view. What seemed like an endless sea of fire wolves was madly charging across the desert. It looked like a blazing sea of fire spreading across the land. Not even a grain of sand would survive under such scorching heat. The ground was being burnt black, the wolf pack scorched the earth in their wake. What amazed people even more was that the flames had caused smoke to rise from the scorched earth. How scary, thought the onlookers, their hearts were beating violently. That group of fire wolves was enough to shock everyone awake. A moment before, they were excited and felt high-spirited, but now they had seen the wolves and they were realizing how terrifying the battle would be. This would really be a bloody battle. That group of terrifying fire wolves destroyed everything in their path. The tribes who lived outside of the city were probably exterminated already. Nobody believed that anyone could survive against such a monstrous pack of wolves. If anything ran into this sea of wolves, they would die. Many people were slightly shaking, they felt weak in the knees, they didn't feel like fighting against the wolves any longer, they were too scared. Finally, the wolf pack arrived at the city walls and stopped. The people on the walls gazed into the distance and could only see an ocean of wolves. Every wolf was surrounded by flames and their tails were drifting in the wind. Everybody could feel the intense stares from the beasts outside the city walls, making them feel uneasy. At the same time, the temperature had increased drastically, the atmosphere had turned into an unbearable inferno. At the front of the wolf pack, there was a fire wolf, its body was gigantic and it had intense flames surrounding its body. Besides, it had 7 tails. Its 7 tails were swinging in the wind. It looked majestic. That fire wolf must be a level 7 Xian beast. It had 7 tails. Its strength was the same as a cultivator of the 7th Xian Qi layer. Its power was terrifying. If a human being of the 3rd or of the 4th Xian Qi layer fought against it, it would be eaten with a single bite. Even the most superficial look at those terrifying eyes was enough to make somebody's heart pound. "Beast!" shouted someone in a deep voice as a tornado rose into the air. Everyone started to raise their heads and saw a silhouette in the sky. That person was wearing black clothes and had long hair which fluttered in the wind. Even though the crowd was facing his back, they could still feel his powerful energy. If he dared to go against a level 7 Xian beast, he was probably extremely powerful. He wasn't the only one. Whistling sounds filled the air as many people started to rush forward. Those people were all revealing their powerful qi. They were all extraordinary cultivators. They all stood in a line, ready for battle. The wolves are extremely strong. This is the strongest attack in 1,000 years. If we don't want them to invade Tianyahage and exterminate all of us, we must work together," said the one in the black clothes, which caused a surge of motivation. The strongest attack in 1,000 years. It seemed like Tianyahage was going to be soaked in blood. Lin Feng frowned and gazed into the distance. There were thousands and thousands of wolves. He wasn't sure exactly how many. Besides, the number of wolves continued to increase. That wolf pack was growing larger by the second. Lin Feng had arrived on the ramparts of Tianyahage. He had rushed here with all of his power, but at that moment, they were surrounded and escape was impossible. Trying to escape by flight would be impossible, especially if he came across an extremely powerful wolf. It would be the end of him. After all, a level 7 Xian beast had already appeared. Who could guarantee that there weren't more powerful wolves among the sea of wolves? Maybe there were some with 8 or 9 tails. Or even Tian level wolves. Let's watch how things progress and then decide, thought Lin Feng. Absorbing fire crystals enabled him to grow stronger, so this was a good opportunity for him to improve his strength. "Die!" shouted the one in black clothes in a dreadful voice. In a flash, he released a monstrous deadly energy and released his pure qi. Boom! The pure qi from the one in black clothes attacked into the wolf pack, slaughtering a large number of wolves in the blink of an eye. But, considering the number of wolves, it only a drop in the ocean. The battle had begun and many people had rushed to attack at the same time. Pure qi filled the air from all directions and shot towards the wolf pack. All of the people attacking were at the Xian Qi layer. There wasn't a single weak cultivator in the group. They were all slaughtering the wolves and tempering themselves in the heat of battle. Cultivating through potentially fatal situations was an excellent method to improve one's battle potential and make advancements. When those on the walls saw the people attacking, a sharp light filled their eyes. Everyone was fighting with all their power. They were fighting to stay alive. This was the only way for them to continue to live and continue growing stronger. Many strong cultivators were already engaged in battle. Besides, inside the city, people were rushing over to join the battle. After all, there still weren't enough people to fight against the monstrous number of wolves. "Meng Qing, stay here with Nua Na and wait for me to come back," said Lin Feng to Meng Qing. Meng Qing glanced at Lin Feng and nodded. Even though she didn't want him to fight against those wolves, she still understood that if Lin Feng wanted to become stronger, he would sometimes need to risk his life. The path of cultivation was filled with dangers. Meng Qing had agreed to stay with Lin Feng and accompany him no matter what the situation. She wasn't going to prevent Lin Feng from getting stronger. She respected Lin Feng's choice. Lin Feng's goal was to become a stronger cultivator. She needed to follow and support him. "If you need me, call out to me," said Lin Feng to Meng Qing, who silently nodded. Immediately after, he jumped from the walls and landed in the center of the wolf pack. He released his powerful deadly energy and it condensed in his hands. In the blink of an eye, many wolves died underneath that sword. In the area surrounding Lin Feng, there was a large empty space. He condensed his grim fire and an astonishing black lotus appeared. Lin Feng's black lotus was filled with a combination of sun qi and deadly energy. "Break!" shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. His black lotus then split into many small black lotuses. There were a few thousands lotus flowers which all contained a powerful deadly energy. The wolves wanted to attack Lin Feng, but they were scared of the black lotus flowers. Lin Feng closed his eyes and sat down cross-legged. He calmed his heart and allowed his surplus souls to emerge from his body, which immediately merged with the black lotus flowers. When using his surplus souls technique, he could already release a monstrous amount of surplus souls. The surplus souls had the power to control the black lotuses. Lin Feng was sitting down, he wasn't fighting directly. His soul was focused entirely on controlling the black lotuses. Lin Feng had to use the entire power of his soul, otherwise he wouldn't have the strength to control thousands of lotus flowers, he wouldn't have the power. However, Lin Feng was able to sit down and control the black lotuses to attack from a distance. The weakest wolves were easily exterminated under the onslaught. Besides, Lin Feng was able to kill stronger wolves, while simultaneously controlling the black lotus flowers to consume the fire crystals dropped from the wolves. Thus, each of the black lotus flowers were growing more and more powerful. Very quickly, the area around Lin Feng was cleared again. The fire wolves weren't able to get close to him anymore. If they tried, they immediately died under the attack from the black lotus flowers. Those black lotus flowers would penetrate into the wolves' bodies and absorb their fire crystals. Those black lotuses were the enemy of these fire wolves. Many people had noticed Lin Feng's actions and were shocked. Lin Feng's method was actually quite suited to dealing with the fire wolves. He was sitting still and controlling thousands of black lotuses. How much of a burden would that be on his soul? In order to accomplish that, an extremely powerful soul was required. Lin Feng didn't only draw the attention from the cultivators, the stronger wolves were also paying attention to what he was doing. A few of them started rushing towards him. Each of the wolves had 4 tails and some had 5 tails, they were all higher Xian level fire wolves, they were terrifying. They all wanted to get rid of Lin Feng, whom was a detestable thorn in their side. Lin Feng abruptly opened his eyes and a black light started flashing through his eyes. Even though he had closed his eyes to control the black lotuses, he could distinctly perceive everything around him. Nothing would be able to distract him even though he had his eyes closed. Many black lotuses rushed back to Lin Feng's side while emitting whistling sounds and they condensed together. Lin Feng was trying to block the wolves rushing towards him, but at that moment, a flag appeared in front of him. It was a gigantic flag that was filled with deadly energy. That flag rushed towards the wolves charging at Lin Feng and in a flash, they were consumed by that flag. It was a shocking sight. That's not a flag. That's a banner, an extremely powerful treasure. Lin Feng was stupefied. Chapter 462, The Memory Jade. First of Saturday's chapter. This is last one for today. The missing one for Saturday is going to be released tomorrow with Sundays. He could still hear the wolves howling, which made Lin Feng shiver. He gazed over and saw that those wolves were trapped inside the banner. Inside that banner, a group of ferocious wolves appeared, but the image was very blurry. They were struggling with all their might to escape, but no matter what, they were unable to escape. Annihilate! Shouted the middle-aged man who was controlling the banner. In a flash, the wolves let out a sad shrill cry. Their bodies started to melt and formed into a pattern engraved into the banner. The chi of the banner grew much stronger after absorbing the wolves. It's similar to my black lotus, which can absorb the fire crystals from the wolves, thought Lin Feng. He was surprised and stupefied to see a banner that could absorb ferocious beasts to grow stronger. Continue killing them, I will watch over you, said the man while smiling at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was stupefied. why would the man want to help him? But since that person was willing, Lin Feng nodded and said, "Thank you, sir." Then, Lin Feng closed his eyes again and continued controlling the black lotuses with his soul. He was absorbing the fire crystals from each wolf he killed. Besides, when the extremely strong wolves tried to attack him, they were absorbed by the middle-aged man's banner. The other strong cultivators were also fighting against the wolves. The most astonishing battle was between the man in a black cloak and the seven-tailed fire wolf. The cultivators and fire wolves were in a constant struggle. On the ground and in the air, swords and bestial flames were colliding. The seven-tailed wolf suddenly increased in size and was soon the size of a small hill. The fire from its 7 tails also grew more terrifying. It was unimaginable. All the other strong cultivators were engaged in a bloody battle against the fire wolves, not letting a single wolf enter the city. Awoo! After a while, the seven-tailed fire wolf howled furiously while looking to the sky. A great number of wolves suddenly stopped fighting, then the seven-tailed wolf turned and started to run away. Its speed was inconceivable. In a flash, the crowd noticed that all of the powerful wolves had escaped. Everyone was extremely surprised. The wolves had retreated and run away. The fire wolves still had much greater numbers than the humans defending the city, but surprisingly, they issued a retreat. While looking at the scorched earth, it gave an unsettling feeling. What a terrifying wolf pack! When the one with the black cloak noticed the retreat, his facial expression became ice cold. He was staring at the seven-tailed fire wolf and frowning. This time, the battles will be much more terrifying and bloodier than we thought. That was just the first wave. The next wave will strike us much harder than the first," said the man with the black cloak indifferently as he left. Such a monstrous wolf pack. That was only the first wave. It seemed like it was going to get tougher as time went on. Lin Feng released his black lotuses, they transformed into sun qi and then penetrated into his body. He opened his eyes, which contained a trace of dazzling sunlight. He looked otherworldly. "My friend, that was amazing, you're terrific," said the man who had used the banner to Lin Feng while smiling. "Your banner is also very strong," replied Lin Feng. "My name is Li Shang. My banner is not bad, but it's far from being as good as those lotus flowers. If I'm not mistaken, it seems that your attack requires a very strong soul to control multiple flowers, so your soul must be extremely strong." "I am Lin Feng," replied Lin Feng. "Lin Feng," whispered Li Shang. He smiled and said, "Lin Feng, do you know what the most important thing is for me, when using my banner?" Lin Feng shook his head. He didn't know much about using those types of attacks. "My banner is a spiritual banner. The most important thing is to have an extremely strong soul. You need to merge pieces of your soul into the banner, making it a part of your body," said Li Shang. He was speaking slowly. He then continued, "You already have that black lotus which enables you to absorb the fire crystals. Coupled with your powerful soul, you could easily create a fire banner. If you create a fire banner, you can imprison those beasts and absorb their fire crystals. Then you won't need to use so much soul power to control so many black lotuses." Lin Feng frowned and said, "Why are you telling me these things? Frankly speaking, I rarely meet people who are an appropriate match with my banner skill. I want to help you create a fire banner. I want to see how powerful your banner will become," said Li Shang while looking overjoyed. He then added, "The banner is an amazing treasure. I look forward to making a banner with you and seeing how powerful it can become." Lin Feng looked perplexed and looked Li Shang directly in the eyes. Lin Feng learned a principle in his previous life: in the world, nothing was ever free. Nobody gave anybody anything for free without expecting something in return. That banner was certainly extremely valuable, but Lin Feng's interlocutor surprisingly wanted to teach him the skill and wanted to help him create a fire banner. Lin Feng didn't understand his motives. But Lin Feng couldn't understand anything from looking into his interlocutor's eyes. He only saw excitement and impatience. "If you think that I am trying to trick you, let me tell you something, even though you are strong, I am much stronger than you. Why would I need to trick you into anything? Said Li Shang while smiling. Lin Feng remained silent. Li Shang was right, he was much stronger than Lin Feng, but if Lin Feng used his full strength, he would be able to fight against him. Of course, that was providing that Li Shang was telling the truth and hadn't hidden his strength during the fight. A fire banner, whispered Lin Feng. He then said, if you teach me how to create the banner, what do you want in exchange? Nothing, said Li Shang while shaking his head. Alright, I accept, agreed Lin Feng while nodding. Alright, good, come with me, said Li Shang while smiling. He looked even more excited, which made Lin Feng trust him even more. He also didn't want anything from Lin Feng. He just looked overjoyed and excited, like a child with a new toy. But did such people really exist? Could a strong cultivator want to help someone just to satisfy his own curiosity? Li Shang started walking towards the city center. Lin Feng was following closely behind him. He waved at Meng Qing, who immediately nodded and followed with no na. Tianyahage wasn't that different from a city of Shuiyu. The streets were wide and the buildings were high and lofty. Li Shang brought Lin Feng to a fortress before they came to a halt. Lin Feng, this is my residence. It's relatively calm, nobody will disturb us, said Li Shang. It was indeed really different from the rest of the city. There weren't many people around. It was a calm and quiet location. Come, said Li Shang while entering the fortress. There was a cold and evil qi inside the fortress. It looked like a palace inside and was extremely well lit. There were cauldrons everywhere and a fire was burning under each of them. Besides, in the main hall, there was a cold wind which caused Lin Feng's soul to shiver. Lin Feng narrowed his eyes. Li Shang lived here. What a majestic place, the only problem was that strange cold wind. I practice a banner skill and my banner is a spiritual banner, it requires a powerful soul to use. That's why the wind here affects the soul, it allows me to strengthen my soul, there's no need to worry about it, explained Li Shang as if he had guessed what Lin Feng was thinking. They then walked to the edge of the fortress. Inside the room, there was a gigantic praying mat made from woven cattail. In front of that mat, there was a large cauldron, the largest cauldron in the house. Lin Feng, that's how you create the banner, you need to use the power of your soul on this to learn how to create the banner, said Li Shang while handing over a jade stone to Lin Feng. Lin Feng took the jade and was surprised. It contained a peculiar qi. It's a memory jade. Lin Feng was stupefied. By putting his soul into it, he could absorb all the memories contained within. It was an extremely precious and valuable jade. Strong cultivators would be able to absorb the memories into their soul. The memory jade was able to record extremely strong and powerful techniques. Only extremely strong cultivators could record their memories onto a memory jade, weaker cultivators were unable to. Besides, the people who put their memories inside memory jades wouldn't waste their energy to put useless skills inside. The instructions to create the banner were surprisingly inside the jade. As expected, it was an extremely valuable weapon. The price of that jade stone was also incredible. Surprisingly, Li Shang was handing treasure after treasure to Lin Feng without hesitation. Lin Feng didn't understand Li Shang's motives. Was he only really just a curious type of person? Lin Feng groaned and immediately put his soul into the jade and explored the memories inside. In a flash, Lin Feng felt like his soul was sucked into a whirlpool of consciousness, countless memories started to appear in his mind. The banner wasn't a weapon like the others, it needed to merge with a person's soul. The strength of a cultivator's soul was one of the most essential aspects when creating the banner. Only a cultivator with a powerful soul would be able to use a spiritual banner. If a cultivator didn't have a strong soul, the power of the banner would be limited. Besides, if the soul was too weak, it wouldn't have the power to merge with a banner. Lin Feng digested the memories and looked at Li Shang. In order to create a banner, I need an emptiness tree as a base. I have some emptiness trees, said Li Shang calmly, which stupefied Lin Feng. Lin Feng had never seen an emptiness tree, but according to the memories in the jade, the tree was able to form a separate space inside it. The emptiness trees needed to accumulate multiple age rings in order to form a separate space, only then would it be suitable for crafting. Besides, every part of the emptiness tree could be used to create all sorts of treasures related to space. It was an extremely precious tree. Yet Li Shang was calmly telling Lin Feng that he had them. Lin Feng, I have all the materials required to create your banner, don't worry. You just need to provide your soul, that's all. It's not difficult to learn. The hardest part is merging your soul into the banner, said Li Shang. Lin Feng was surprised. He knew how to use the surplus souls technique, so creating a banner would be very appropriate for him. As he continued to inspect the memories, he started to feel very excited. I will try my hardest, said Lin Feng. Li Shang nodded and said, let's not waste time. Let's start creating your banner. What you need to decide on now is, do you want to create a fire banner or a different type of banner? With your powerful soul, you will be able to choose what best suits you, there will be no problem for you to merge with it. I want to create a fire banner, said Lin Feng without hesitation. Li Shang nodded without commenting. He slightly moved and a number of items appeared in front of Lin Feng. Amongst those things, there was a red tree. The tree was surrounded by a space chi. It was an emptiness tree. That emptiness tree was very small, about 1 meter high. However, Li Shang made a small movement and the tree suddenly started to grow several times larger. Very quickly, it had transformed into a huge red tree which reached the ceiling of the fortress. How mysterious, thought Lin Feng. He was stupefied. That emptiness tree was useful when creating space treasures or dimensions. Even after being uprooted, it still contains such powerful space energy. Do you want to make it or should I? Asked Li Shang to Lin Feng, who was staring at the gigantic emptiness tree. I will do it. Lin Feng moved and in a flash, a gigantic fire started burning all over his body. It was filled with a scorching hot sun chi. Ignite! Shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. His sun chi moved through the air towards the emptiness tree. Immediately, it engulfed its roots, then climbed up the trunk and spread across the branches until it reached the tree's peak. Very quickly, the tree was ablaze with scorching hot sun flames. However, there were no signs of a raging inferno from the tree. There were no huge flames, the flames were tiny, it seemed more like a small ember. Only the sound of the rampaging flames allowed Lin Feng know that the tree was burning. That tree was ablaze and emitting a scorching heat. Despite the lack of flames, it was very intriguing to witness. As the tree was burning, Lin Feng released his powerful surplus souls which started to penetrate into the emptiness tree. Li Shang was just observing Lin Feng as he was working on the banner. He was extremely surprised. Lin Feng was extremely skilled when controlling the intricate fire and the power of his soul. He was outstanding. He must have studied the art of fabricating weapons in the past. This couldn't possibly be his first time. It would obviously be beneficial for Lin Feng to have fabricated weapons in the past when creating his own banner. Besides, fabricating a banner wasn't a difficult task. The hardest part was the merging of one's soul into the banner. Time passed slowly. Half a day soon passed by, but Lin Feng and Li Shang were still in the same place and hadn't moved the entire time. Besides, apart from the wind blowing through the fortress, there was also a scorching hot chi moving through the halls. The entire fortress was filled with an intense heat. In the depths of the fortress, Lin Feng and Li Shang haven't moved an inch. At that moment, Lin Feng's eyes were closed and he intensely focused on his task. Besides, his face was starting to grow pale. It was the most crucial moment in the fabrication of the banner. The emptiness tree in front of Lin Feng had already transformed into something which almost looked like the spiritual banner, but was still extremely large. "Flames!" shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. In a flash, a terrifying sea of flames emerged from his body and rushed through the air. It immediately rushed towards the tree. The banner was still in its embryonic form. Bzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz. A buzzing sound spread in the air. The banner was surrounded by flames, but the flames didn't look like they would burn the banner. Instead, it formed a small crack in the middle of the banner. Emptiness tree. That small crack is the separate space. It contains the power of fire and space. It's so difficult to pierce into it, whispered Lin Feng. Immediately after, he moved and his soul started to move towards the banner. It seemed like there was an army of small souls twining around the fire and using it to penetrate into the small crack. A subtle cracking sound filled the air and it seemed like the separate space was going to fracture. The myriad of surplus souls and the sea of flames penetrated into the banner. There were no more flames around the banner at all, but the fire chi it had started to emit was scorching hot. There were no flames, but the fire chi was monstrous. "Soul sacrifice!" shouted Lin Feng. His face instantly turned deathly pale. The banner started shaking and immediately after, it started to shrink. It was now the size of a regular banner and it seemed like a gentle breeze might blow it away. However, the banner suddenly unleashed an incredible fire chi in retaliation. Fusion. Lin Feng gnashed his teeth as the flames continued to fill the air. The banner was circling through the air as if it was caught in a hurricane. Done. Lin Feng's face was deathly pale, but he looked delighted. He had the feeling that he now had another arm. He could feel the banner as if it was part of his own body. It was the first time that Lin Feng had merged his soul with a weapon. It felt like he could move it as freely as he did his arms or legs. Li Shang had given him the memory jade, and the instructions to create the banner. Lin Feng stretched his arm and the banner shrunk to the size of his palm. It was miraculous. Emptiness trees are extremely mysterious, thought Lin Feng while putting his banner away. He turned to Li Shang and smiled. "Lin Feng, you're good at fabricating weapons. When facing the wolves, you will no longer need to exhaust so much energy. You only need to absorb them into your banner." Lin Feng nodded, but he felt a bit strange. Why did Li Shang help him to such an extent? "If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have managed to create this banner. Thank you very much. If you need anything, just ask and I will gladly return your kindness." Li Shang looked particularly excited and said, "All right, can you give me the method you used to give your soul such magic powers? Then I will also take your ring with the Na stone. I want everything that is inside. I want all those things in exchange for the banner. It's because I helped you create the banner." "Huh?" Lin Feng was astonished. Li Shang wanted the surplus souls technique and everything that Lin Feng possessed in exchange for the banner? Even though the banner weapon was valuable, Lin Feng's surplus souls technique was much more valuable. It seemed like Li Shang knew that Lin Feng was practicing a soul technique. "Are you not asking for too much?" asked Lin Feng without losing his temper. He remained calm. Li Shang shook his head and said in an indifferent tone, "I'm not a greedy person. I didn't absorb your soul, that's what a greedy person would do. Besides, I gave you all the materials and instructions to create your banner. I've been extremely nice." Lin Feng just sat there and said nothing while looking at Li Shang. Li Shang was also silently looking at Lin Feng with a cold look. Boom! A monstrous deadly energy filled the air and Lin Feng's silhouette suddenly rose into the air. Lin Feng raised his hand and a sword started condensed which illuminated the entire room. It then moved straight towards Li Shang. "Humph!" Li Shang groaned coldly. He raised his hand and an evil wind emerged from the palm of his hand. It contained a powerful evil energy. It seemed like a million ghosts were trapped inside his palm. A rumbling sound spread through the air as the powers collided. Lin Feng wasted no time and was already flying through the air towards the exit. In a flash he had disappeared from sight. Li Shang's cold expression suddenly changed into that of a large grin and he looked like he had gone insane with excitement. He rushed towards the exit while flying on the evil wind. Chapter 464, Insane Laughter. Lin Feng came out of the fortress and glanced around. He immediately noticed Meng Qing and Noa Na. "Meng Qing, we are leaving. Let's go," shouted Lin Feng, which stupefied Meng Qing. Immediately after, Meng Qing glanced to Noa Na then flew into the air following behind Lin Feng. A hurricane of cold air rushed out from the fortress. Li Shang looked even more excited than before and he was watching Lin Feng with a huge grin on his face. His wind swirled around his body and rushed through the air, carrying him towards Lin Feng. On the ground, Noa Na was astonished. She was fixedly staring at the silhouettes disappearing on the horizon. Immediately after, Noa Na's face turned red. She felt both hopeless and desperate. She understood Lin Feng's intentions. He only called out for Meng Qing to leave with him, which meant he wasn't going to take Noa Na with him. Lin Feng was leaving her behind, because she was too weak and would only be a burden. If Lin Feng and Meng Qing had to take Noa Na with them, they would have no chance of escaping. They had the choice of staying to fight Li Shang or leaving her behind. They chose to leave her. "I hope we meet again," said Noa Na, who was profoundly surprised. She hadn't thought that they would be separated so suddenly. Her father was dead, her tribe had been annihilated and Lin Feng was now abandoning her. It seemed like she was all alone. But immediately, she smiled. Even though there were tears in her eyes, her smile was resplendent. Even if she ended up alone, she lucky to be alive. In the sky, the three silhouettes were rushing through the city. Lin Feng and Meng Qing were flying in the front. They were clearly trying to escape. However, Li Shang was following behind them while maintaining the same distance, neither catching them and not falling behind. Lin Feng's facial expression was cold. He released his deadly energy, but he was very clear on how strong Li Shang was. With his banner, he was easily able to handle Xian beasts of the 4th and 5th Xian level. It was becoming more obvious that cultivators at 5th Xian Qi layer wouldn't stand a chance of resisting Li Shang. If Lin Feng fought against him, he would need to be cautious as he was no longer sure if he could win. How fast! His speed is incredible, thought Lin Feng, whose expression was still ice-cold. At that moment, he was using his full strength to escape with Meng Qing, but it seemed like it was impossible to escape Li Shang, and on top of that, Li Shang was only casually flying through the air. He wasn't even using his full power. "Lin Feng, I just want to learn your soul technique and to see if there's anything useful in your ring. I have already said, I am a nice person and won't kill you. Why are you being like this?" said Li Shang. He was still smiling and continued to mention that he wasn't going to kill them, as if this was his way of being friendly. Lin Feng ignored him and continued to fly forwards. Very quickly, their group could be seen flying over the city gate. If they left the city, they would encounter the countless fire wolves. The desert around Tianyahage was probably filled with countless powerful fire wolves. Lin Feng stopped. It seemed like he was done running away. He landed on the ramparts of the city and looked at Li Shang with a cold stare. Li Shang stopped in mid-air when he saw that Lin Feng had stopped running away. He was looking at Lin Feng with a big grin, but his expression had grown slightly tense. He seemed extremely carefree and imposing as he stood in the air. "Li Shang, I asked you if you wanted anything in exchange and you said no. Now you are going back on your word," said Lin Feng. His body was surrounded by a shocking deadly energy. He took a step forwards and his sword whistled through the air. Lin Feng slashed his sword towards Li Shang with all his power. "Wait! You want to fight me?" said Li Shang, looking confused. He gave a small wave of his hand which formed a hurricane of pure qi. The hurricane then dashed forward and collided with Lin Feng's sword energy. Lin Feng's sword energy immediately vanished and his deadly energy was blown away. Lin Feng narrowed his eyes. As expected, Li Shang hadn't revealed his true strength. He had blocked Lin Feng's sword attack in such a relaxed and carefree way. His pure qi contained unbelievable power, there was no longer any doubting his strength, he was much stronger than a cultivator at the peak of the 5th Xian qi layer, he might still be even stronger than that. Lin Feng didn't continue to talk. His pure qi filled the air and his deadly energy was once again released into the air. Li Shang frowned and his face looked surprised. Lin Feng's deadly energy was extremely powerful, unfortunately, it seemed like nothing when facing against Li Shang. A black sword condensed in the air, that black sword was filled with an incredible deadly energy. Ah, interesting, said Li Shang with a grin. He released some more pure qi which grew stronger and stronger. His entire body was surrounded by a hurricane which seemed like it had the power to tear the sky apart. Die! Shouted Lin Feng furiously while releasing a monstrous deadly energy which crashed towards Li Shang like a tidal wave. However, Li Shang was still calm and carefree. His hurricane tore through the wave of deadly energy and then collided with Lin Feng's sword. A rumbling sound spread through the air, then suddenly the pure qi hurricane seemed to be angered as the power drastically increased. Lin Feng continued to release an endless amount of deadly energy towards the hurricane. However, it couldn't be stopped. Boom! 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 A huge burst of power crashed through the air, destroying everything in its path. Li Shang's entire body had been surrounded by a black ocean which was Lin Feng's deadly energy, and Li Shang's clothes were disheveled. The atmosphere had returned to normal, but Li Shang's face was now expressionless, he still looked calm and carefree, but also cold. At that moment, Lin Feng and Meng Qing's silhouettes were gone. When Lin Feng sensed Li Shang's pure qi suddenly surge in strength, he realized that he was never a match for Li Shang. Li Shang was stronger than Lin Feng had ever imagined. Therefore, while Li Shang was distracted by the deadly energy, Meng Qing and Lin Feng immediately fled at full speed. They entered the desert filled with wolves and were gambling that Li Shang wouldn't dare to follow them. When Li Shang saw them leaving, he started to grin again. He immediately rushed through the air and appeared at the same distance behind Lin Feng and Meng Qing as before, then continued to follow from behind. He didn't even hesitate before entering the desert, which was overrun with wolves, some even had 7 tails, some might have more. Huh? Lin Feng was stupefied. He was still chasing them. They were now in the wolves' territory, but he continued to chase them without a second thought. Lin Feng and Meng Qing's facial expressions had changed. They were flying higher and higher into the sky. They were trying their best to avoid the fire wolves, they didn't dare to slow down and actually seemed to increase their speed. Since Li Shang was still following behind them, there was only one place to run. They had to back to the place where they first arrived, that was the only way for them to leave the desert and escape from Li Shang. Li Shang obviously couldn't know what Lin Feng was thinking. So he was still following behind them in a relaxed manner, he continued to maintain the same distance. He still wasn't using his full strength to chase them. It almost seemed like he was playing with them. Lin Feng, is this really necessary? I only want a few things, I don't want to see you run to your death, said Li Shang calmly as he followed behind Lin Feng, which made Lin Feng pull a long face. Li Shang was never interested in seeing Lin Feng's banner, it seemed like he only wanted to play around. The ground was scorching hot and emitting an extreme heat, certain parts of the ground would burst into flame, but there were no fire wolves to be seen. Lin Feng was surprised, did those fire wolves really come from the depths of the planet? But Lin Feng didn't have time to think about anything else, all he wanted was to escape from Li Shang. Even though Li Shang wasn't chasing them with all his power and looked like he was playing around, who could tell when he would grow bored and kill them? Of course, if Lin Feng was pushed too far, then he wouldn't care about the consequences and would unleash the evil swords. They continued to fly through the air for a while and Lin Feng was exhausted. He made a slight movement and the banner appeared under their feet and started to grow. The huge banner flew through the air while carrying Lin Feng and Meng Qing. Flying on the banner required Lin Feng to use less energy. He started to remove some purity stones from his and continuously absorbed them to recover his power. Li Shang looked even more excited when he watched this. He was still following Lin Feng in a calm and relaxed way. His speed was neither slow nor fast. No matter how fast Lin Feng tried to escape, the distance between them remained the same the entire time. We're almost there. After a long period of time, they could finally see the plateau, which meant they had almost arrived. If they were able to make it back, they would be able to safely leave the desert. Lin Feng was more concerned about Li Shang, who had been flying this entire time. He was afraid that Li Shang might suddenly catch them and there was nothing they could do to stop him. But Lin Feng's fears didn't become a reality. They soon landed on the ground and arrived back to the place which transported them there. Li Shang was still following them, but maintained his distance. He was still flying leisurely in the air as he smiled while looking towards Lin Feng and Meng Qing. You're not going to continue running away? Running away? A smirk appeared on Lin Feng's face. He grabbed Meng Qing's hand as he added, "Cya." When he finished, Lin Feng and Meng Qing vanished from sight, and Li Shang was shocked to see them escape his senses. When Li Shang saw that Lin Feng and Meng Qing were gone, he was shocked, but immediately after, his grin grew wider and he looked even more excited. Li Shang slowly raised his head towards the sky and leant back, closed his eyes and took a long deep breath. He looked like he was savoring this moment. Immediately after, he opened his eyes and a spectacular light could be seen in his eyes. Ha, ah ha ha, ah ha 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 ha, ah ha 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 ha. Li Shang had burst into an endless fit of laughter, an insane laughter. Chapter 465, The Cursed World. Ha 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 ha. Li Shang's laughter grew more and more hysterical. He was releasing a terrifyingly powerful qi which shook the heavens. If Lin Feng was able to see this scene, he would know that they would never have escaped from Li Shang if he didn't allow it. Li Shan's power could bring Lin Feng to his knees, unable to move or breathe in Li Shang's presence. The ground as far as the eye could see was shaking because of Li Shang's hysterical laughter. His qi was flowing in all directions, it tore through the sky and ripped apart the earth. Shortly after, the ground burst open, forming a large valley beneath his feet. Shortly after, Li Shang's silhouette rose into the air. His black cloak was violently fluttering inside the hurricane. Kacha. The valley was being forced open by a powerful force which seemed to be shifting the entire earth. An extremely powerful fire energy was rising from beneath the valley. Soon, the valley was filled with bright red flames. It was magma. The terrifying magma started to overflow from the valley and spread across the desert. The entire desert seemed like it had vanished, only flames from the magma remained where the sand used to be. Besides, the magma continued to rise into the air, it shot into the sky like an erupting volcano. It was terrifying. Li Shang finally stopped laughing and looked towards the terrifying magma as it rose into the sky. He looked happy and carefree. Li Shang! Shouted a husky voice from inside the magma. Then, a pair of eyes suddenly opened on the surface of the magma. As the magma rose into the air, it slowly started to take the form of a gigantic beast, more precisely a fire wolf. It was a gigantic fire wolf. "Fire King, what brings you out?" said Li Shang while looking at the terrifying fire wolf as if he was greeting an old friend. "Li Shang, what's wrong with you? Why are you laughing so loudly? What could possibly make you so happy?" asked the Fire King. Its voice caused the atmosphere to tremble. Didn't you see it? You probably knew about that exit a long time ago, said Li Shang. I know of it, but that exit will not work for you. So why are you laughing here like a fool? Said Fire King indifferently. He had lived here since ancient times, how could he not know about the exit to Shuiyu? Well, I gave him an extremely precious gift to take outside with him, said Li Shang while looking at the sky and taking a deep breath. Immediately after, the clouds in the sky started to swirl and a huge hurricane formed around Li Shang. Boom! Li Shang unleashed a terrifying energy from his fist which crashed through the air causing a thunderous boom. Boom! 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 Li Shang continued to violently attack the same area, trying to force the door to appear for him. This bloody world is a cursed world, I, Li Shang, will find a way to leave. The earth was violently shaking and the heavens seemed like they would collapse at any moment. Being powerful is a burden. The more you know about this world, the more it drives you insane. If you're like other people, you will never understand what kind of world this is. But, you have already found out the truth of the world we live in. But I can tell you that what prevents us from leaving is not a seal, and this world is not cursed. This is a normal world just like any other, sighed the Fire King. Its voice had grown ancient and weary. He was much older than Li Shang, the gap in age was tremendous. It was born at the very center of the world. Over the years it eventually formed its own intelligence. It had a vast and broad knowledge which spanned over millennia. The Fire Wolf was well aware of the limits of this world, they were unable to break the boundary of that world and escape their cage, but there were paths to the outside which allowed people to enter. Therefore, the wolf knew that Li Shang's dream of leaving would remain just that. What about you? What are your plans? Asked Li Shang towards the Fire King. All I want to do now is attack Tianya Hage and slowly gain control over this world. If I manage to conquer the world, I would have no reason to leave it behind, said Fire King slowly. I wish you success and I hope you'll be able to achieve your dream in the future, said Li Shang while smiling. His body was then consumed by light and he immediately disappeared from sight with incredible speed. The Fire King was just looking at Li Shang's figure in the distance, then slowly moved back into the magma. Very quickly, the desert returned to its original state as if nothing had occurred. After having escaped from the desert, Meng Qing and Lin Feng appeared in front of the ancient tree. They felt refreshed breathing in the cool air of the lovesick forest. They felt like it had been a lifetime since they had felt such refreshing air. Lin Feng and Meng Qing looked at each other and smiled. They had gone through a very mysterious and mystical experience. They seemed to teleport to a mysterious region which was vastly different from their own. Lin Feng turned around, his eyes were alight while looking towards the illusion surrounding the tree. Suddenly, Lin Feng released a very sharp qi and his hand pierced through the air. A slicing sound emerged and a tree fell, blocking the entrance to the illusion. Lin Feng continued attacking until the entrance was completely sealed shut. Little Feng, what's going on? When Yu Menghe heard the loud noises, her silhouette flickered and she appeared in front of Lin Feng, 4 women had accompanied her. She was surprised, why had Lin Feng sealed the entrance to the illusion? Mother, we can never go to that place again, said Lin Feng while looking at Yu Menghe. Lin Feng looked strange, he felt like they should never go back to that region. It was a dangerous place filled with evil and death. The Fire Wolves had an army powerful enough to conquer the land, who knew whether they would succeed or not. Yu Menghe remained silent for a few seconds and replied, all right, we won't go there again. Lin Feng smiled and started walking with Yu Menghe. He asked, Mother, has anything particular happened the past days in Shuiyu? Nothing important, some people from the Dragon Mountain Empire have arrived in Shuiyu. They probably came to discuss the great competition of Shuiyu, said Yu Menghe while frowning, and then continued, besides, those people from Dragon Mountain have also brought along some people from the country of Tianfeng. Tianfeng is just like Shuiyu, it's a country under the jurisdiction of the Dragon Mountain Empire. The great competition of Shuiyu, whispered Lin Feng. Last time, the national competition of Shuiyu had abruptly stopped due to corruption and tampering. Lin Feng was wondering how the people of Dragon Mountain Empire would select their cultivators. Little Feng, do you want to participate in the great competition of Shuiyu? Asked Yu Menghe. The most outstanding disciples of the 13 countries of Shuiyu will engage in battles which will allow them to grow stronger, why wouldn't I want to? Lin Feng's eyes were filled with excitement. He couldn't stay in Shuiyu forever, he had to leave at some point. Shuiyu was only the start of his adventure. Yu Menghe remained silent. Actually, she had contradictory thoughts to Lin Feng. On one hand she was hoping that Lin Feng wouldn't want to leave Shuiyu, but on the other hand she was also hoping that Lin Feng would be to explore the world and be a free spirit. If the Empire thought that Lin Feng was outstanding, nobody in Shuiyu would dare to harm him. She was even hoping that Lin Feng would, one day, be able to take revenge for all the grievances of the past. After all, she wanted to get her revenge too, but she wasn't powerful enough. Lin Hai and Yu Menghe had suffered a terrible fate, they were forced into hiding, they didn't have enough power to truly be together, they were forced into secrecy. But she had only one son, Lin Feng. If Lin Feng went and participated in the great competition of Shuiyu, it would be a very difficult challenge for him. Yu Menghe didn't want Lin Feng to carry such a heavy burden by himself. She didn't want Lin Feng to eventually crumble under the pressure. She was scared that he would eventually lose his life because of past grievances. Yu Menghe and Lin Hai would normally share a similar opinion on most matters. They both wanted Lin Feng to live a normal and ordinary life, if he didn't, they at least wanted him to be safe. But since Lin Feng had already entered the world of cultivators, he couldn't stop walking the dangerous path, it was impossible. Lin Feng had to keep moving forwards, step by step, until the day he stood at the very top. Little Feng, no matter what, whether you want to go or not, you have to remember how important your life is. You have to keep living, that is the only thing me and your father wishes for. Said Yu Menghe while staring at Lin Feng. Don't worry, it's not easy to kill me. Said Lin Feng while smiling, which stupefied Yu Menghe. Lin Hai was still in front of the tree with the cabins, he was still carving into trees. He was absolutely still and seemed like he wasn't part of this world, as if he had forgotten everything. Lin Feng kept walking and didn't go and disturb his father. He also knew about his father's seal. It seemed like Lin Hai was trying to increase his strength and vitality, he was trying to break through the seal that was placed on him. Having his power sealed and part of him locked away, Lin Hai didn't feel that he was truly living his life, even if he didn't say it. Lin Feng understood how much his father had suffered to protect him. He was shunned and eventually expelled from the clan of his own flesh and blood, he wasn't able to step up and protect his son from danger, and when he was inside the imperial city, he was forced to hide away, unable to freely be with his own wife. He was unable to take his revenge and was constantly hiding in fear from the imperial clan. Lin Hai had a great burden on his shoulders. Even if he was always smiling, his smile was only to hide the suffering in his heart. Chapter 466, Resurrection of the Yunhai Sect. Mother, I am leaving for a while. Said Lin Feng, who didn't want to disturb Lin Hai. Yu Menghe smiled and nodded in reply. In the imperial city, everybody was now aware that Lin Feng was her son, so it was unlikely that anyone would attack Lin Feng. His enemies would have to think twice before trying anything. Besides, Lin Feng's personal strength was also extraordinary, so Yu Menghe wasn't too worried about Lin Feng's safety. The depths of the lovesick forest was a restricted area, nobody was able to enter that area without permission, but Lin Feng could enter freely. Lin Feng and Meng Qing left the lovesick forest and headed to the Celestial Academy. When the students of the academy saw Lin Feng and Meng Qing, they all looked at them with respectful gazes. The students worshipped them. At the national competition, everyone had seen how powerful Lin Feng was, including a large amount of people from the academy, and even those who hadn't witnessed it with their own eyes, had heard about what had happened. As expected, they are destined soulmates, thought many people when they saw Lin Feng and Meng Qing. Lin Feng looked elegant and imposing, Meng Qing looked pure and holy like a celestial being. They were a perfect match, just like a string of pearl and jade. The students of the Celestial Academy all stopped what they were doing when they noticed Meng Qing and Lin Feng. They started to follow them, which made Lin Feng smile wryly. He wasn't used to people worshipping him. He went to the military students' quarters and encountered Mr. Qi and Mr. Hua. Lan Jiao, Jing Yun and Yi Shui were also there when Lin Feng arrived. Besides, they had already befriended the two strange old men. What bothered Lin Feng was that the two old men were relaxing and playing chess. Jing Yun and Yi Shui were preparing tea for them, and Lan Jiao was next to the old men watching them play with a worshipping gaze. Lin Feng was shocked, speechless. "Mr. Hua, I am intelligent and a fast learner, please teach me alchemy," said Lan Jiao to the old man, but Mr. Hua ignored her and continued playing chess. "Mr. Hua, Mr. Qi, you really know how to enjoy life," said Lin Feng while smiling and walking over to the old men. "You and your goddess were able to take a break and have a tranquil and carefree lifestyle. Why wouldn't you allow these two old men to enjoy some relaxation?" said Mr. Qi while laughing wholeheartedly. Lin Feng looked very different than in the past. When they decided to follow Lin Feng, he was still very weak and still had the air of youth. But they had seen the battles of Xiangjiang Lake. The two old men knew that Lin Feng had already surpassed their power. Besides, he had surpassed them in such a short period of time that the two old men couldn't even believe their eyes. It was like a dream. They had initially thought that Lin Feng would surpass them after a few years, but in fact, he had needed less than a year and he was already much stronger than them. He could easily kill cultivators of the 3rd and 4th Xian-Qi layer like they were insects. Not to mention that Lin Feng's background was also incredible. "Ha!" laughed Mr. Hua and then said while looking at Lin Feng, "Don't listen to Mr. Qi. If you need anything, just give us an order." Lin Feng was surprised, but he quickly returned to normal again. Mr. Hua was extremely kind. He was the most understanding of Lin Feng. "Mr. Hua, what orders are you talking about? Back then, you decided to follow me, a little nobody. I will always remember that," said Lin Feng while shaking his head and smiling. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi nodded and said, "If we hadn't understood you back then and had no relationship with you, we wouldn't have followed you." "Indeed, Lin Feng, why do you need to talk that way and sound sentimental? You're so womanly," said Mr. Qi. "Ha, yes." Lin Feng nodded. He then continued, "Mr. Hua, I need you to go back to Yangzhou City and then bring a troop to the Yunhai mountain chain. I want you to encircle the mountain chain for 7 days." Jing Yun shivered and her eyes started to twinkle. Bring people to the Yunhai mountain chain. Encircle it for 7 days? What did Lin Feng want to do? Besides, I also want to ask you, Mr. Qi, to take a troop to the Haoyu sect and exterminate them," said Lin Feng, which made Jing Yun shiver again. Chu Zhanpeng and his father Chu Qing were dead. The Haoyu sect was at its weakest and most vulnerable state. Lin Feng wanted to keep his promise and resurrect the Yunhai sect. Those who participated in the extermination of the Yunhai sect needed to die. The time had come to get revenge for the Yunhai sect. "No problem. No problem here either," the two old men replied and nodded. They then immediately stood up. "Lin Feng, it is said that the former territory of the Yunhai sect has been invaded by those who helped destroy it. Besides, the Yunhai mountain chain is also inhabited by a number of new sections. It is because of the Black Wind Mountain. It is a great location for sects to train and cultivate. The location gives many advantages to those sections," said Jing Yun to Lin Feng, as she explained the situation. Lin Feng slightly nodded. He understood why the Yunhai mountain chain was a good location for a sect. Surround it for 7 days. Nobody should even think about taking a single step inside the territory. People who are residing in the mountain chain will have 7 days to evacuate. If they are not gone after 7 days, kill them all. Mr. Qi, after destroying the Haoyu sect, have some people bring the spoils of war back to Yangzhou City, then move the troops towards the ice and snow mountain village. Wait for me at the halfway point and I will meet you there, said Lin Feng coldly. There were no laws in the world of cultivation except for the law of the jungle. In the past, Duan Tianlang had influenced the Ice and Snow Mountain Village, the Haoyu sect and the Wanshou sect to join hands and destroy the Yunhai sect. 3 years had passed since that bloodbath and a debt of blood had to be paid with blood. I know what to do, said Mr. Huo while nodding. Let's not waste time, Lin Feng, Mr. Qi and I will leave immediately. All right, said Lin Feng while nodding. Mr. Qi and Mr. Hua then immediately left without wasting a single moment. Jing Yun looked at Lin Feng and her eyes were bright. She had known Lin Feng for a long time and she had seen him accomplish so many great things. Jing Yun could still remember how Lin Feng was back then when he had only broken through to the 6th Qi layer. He was just an ordinary disciple of the Yunhai sect and was considered very weak. Then, he suddenly started to dazzle everyone like a meteor flashing across the sky. He had fought his way through many life and death battles, and step by step, he made progress on his cultivation. Now, he considered as an extremely powerful cultivator and he easily had the power to destroy a sect. Lin Feng was already stronger than Nan Gongling was in the past. Maybe he really could resurrect the former glory of the Yunhai sect. He was a young man, only 18 years old, yet so elegant and prestigious. He had become the most talented disciple of the Yunhai sect and his glory was unmatched. If he was unable to resurrect the Yunhai sect, then no one could return it to Shuiyu. Jing Yun had overheard conversations in the past regarding the Yunhai sect and Nan Gongling. People would say that if the Yunhai sect hadn't been annihilated, then it would have flourished once again. 2 years before, the Yunhai sect was at its weakest. It was a period of decline for the sect, which was why they couldn't defend themselves from attack. In the end, Lin Feng survived and inherited the Yunhai sect. Its resurrection was in his hands. Lin Feng had made a promise and these were things that he needed to do. Lin Feng! Shouted Lan Jiao at that moment. Lin Feng turned his head and looked towards her. She looked like she was laden with grief and her face was contorted. Lin Feng, I'm leaving, said Lan Jiao, which surprised Lin Feng, but he immediately regained his composure. Lan Jiao was neither his friend nor his enemy. He had accepted to take her with him because the Dream Pavilion had been exterminated. Lan Jiao wanted to keep on living so she had had to follow Lin Feng. A long time had passed since those events and Lan Jiao wanted to live her own life. When she saw Lin Feng remain silent, she continued, the people from the Cosmic Pavilion are already in Shuiyu, they are in the Imperial City. The Cosmic Pavilion. Lin Feng was stupefied. The Dream Pavilion was a subgroup of the Cosmic Pavilion which was an influential power in the Dragon Mountain Empire. They were extremely powerful, more than those small spheres of influence in Shuiyu. Surprisingly, they had come to Shuiyu. Lan Jiao, even though you know everything about what happened in Celestial River, you shouldn't tell them about it. The second Prince Duan Wuye shouldn't be offended at any cost. While they are in Shuiyu, the Cosmic Pavilion does not have the power to harm him, warned Lin Feng. Lin Feng and Duan Wuye often had contact. Lin Feng still didn't understand why Duan Wuye always acted so friendly towards him, it was unfathomable. Lin Feng really didn't understand Duan Wuye. In Celestial River, Duan Wuye had even dared attack an evil ectoplasm king. If Lan Jiao wanted to use this opportunity to attack Duan Wuye in Shuiyu, she would be killed and Duan Wuye would emerge unharmed. I know, replied Lan Jiao while nodding. What happened in Celestial River will not be mentioned, I will pretend to know nothing about it. All right then, replied Lin Feng while nodding. Lan Jiao was still one of his acquaintances and Lin Feng hoped that nothing bad would happen to her. Is there anything you want to tell me? Asked Lan Jiao while looking towards Lin Feng in a warm and friendly way. After remaining silent for a few seconds, Lin Feng said, Take good care of yourself. I will, said Lan Jiao while smiling. Immediately after, she turned around and left. She didn't take anything with her, she simply left with empty hands. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.